Holy crap.
People persist in doubting the evidence.
Don't run and hide. Don't be afraid. Don't turn away any longer. The truth will set you free.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
We're turning all of our antennas towards Jimmy Church.
And now, your host, the captain of conspiracy, the prince of paranormal. This ain't your daddy's radio network show. This is Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
All right, here we go. Monday, yeah. Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses. That's right, today's Monday. Always a good day. February 16th, 47 days into the new year. 318 days left. As always, we are live from the truthfunders.com studios right here, downtown Burbank, California. Truth Funders. Do you have a book, an expedition, invention, or paranormal documentary you need to get funded? Go to truthfunders.com. Truth Funders, the #1 source of backing your project into the fringe. For KJCR and the Game Changer Network, I am your oh-so-humble host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? Today is Monday. Got a lot of stuff to do tonight. Got a lot of breaking news to get to. We have Jim Mars at the bottom of the hour. Kick things off with a proud salute to the men and women in uniform all around the world fighting the good fight for us. Without them, there is no me, there is no you, there is no us fighting for our right to freedom of speech. Everything that's going down in the world right now, trying to clamp down freedom of speech and our rights. So I need you to think about that for a second. For without them, there is no me, there is no you, there is no us, and you could not hear me right now. I need you to think about that for a second. Everything is great here at Fade to Black. The Bunker, Dark, Doc. Love Mondays. Man, oh man. It's hard to deal with a few days off. We need to crank this baby to 7 days a week. What do you say? All right, don't get your hopes up. Have you subscribed to the podcast? Just go to jimmychurchradio.com, click on the podcast page. It's right there. We now have so many different ways to listen to this show. Bunch of different stream sources, stretching the network far and wide. I'd like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States, hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. Welcome. This is Fade to Black. The Studio Dome speakers, Bluetooth, the promo is still going on right now for the SD1 Bluetooth speaker. If you are listening to us right now on a tablet, iPhone, Android, you need one of these Bluetooth speakers. Just go over to jimmychurchradio.com, click on the banner right there, Studio Dome SD1. You'll see it as the black banner that you can barely see. We will be getting that straightened out. Just go there and click. Go over to Studio Dome. Enter the promo code Jimmy, Jimmy, and you'll get $40 off the list price of $99.99. That's right, $59.99, and you're going to get free shipping inside of the United States. I don't know if it covers Canada. I just know it's free shipping. So when you put in your address and everything and you put in the promo code, it says right there, it just pops up, it says free shipping. But I don't know if that includes, Madagascar. I don't know. Zimbabwe. South Africa. I don't know. Contact in the Desert is coming up. It is May 29th through the 31st in Joshua Tree, California. We are talking to the good folks over at Contact in the Desert today. The contest is now ready to run. We will have that tomorrow for you to go and enter the contest. Next week, we will probably be giving away next Wednesday. I think we're going to, maybe Fader Night. Maybe we'll do it on Fader Night. But we're going to probably give away, maybe 7-8 tickets next Fader Night, next Thursday. Okay, so starting tomorrow night, you will be able to enter. We'll have the banner up on the website that'll take you to a landing page for Fade to Black. It'll be right there. You just enter, and we are going to start going to town. And we'll start giving away tickets next week. I'm excited about that. You do want to go to Contact in the Desert. And if you've never been to an event like this, a big conference like this on acreage like this in the middle of the desert, you need to go to this one. If you're going to pick one to go to all year long, this is the one to go to. A lot of exciting speakers out there. Richard Dolan, Georgios Tsoukalos, Eric Von Daniken, yours truly, and also tonight's guest, Jim Mars, will be out there. Last year, Mars came down and hung out with all of the Fadernauts and everybody that had won tickets last year, took pictures with everybody, and I think to this day, Space Boy holds that picture of him and Jim Mars, both wearing cowboy hats, near and dear to his heart. Space Boy, I know you're listening right now. Run that in Twitter real quick. You got to see this picture. It definitely looks like father and son. It's spooky. It's really spooky. So you do want to come and hang out with us. We're going to try to get the contest done and finished in its entirety in the next few weeks, maybe a month. That way, everybody that does win tickets, you'll be able to get all of your transportation and lodging needs fixed up. You know, you got to ask for that time off. You're going to need to take that Friday off for sure. You're going to have to take that Monday off for sure. You got to make that baby a 4-day weekend. You want to show up to work on Tuesday with a sunburn. Okay, that's what you want to do. Oh, man, it's going to be great. Contact in the Desert, May 29th through the 31st. If you want any info on Contact in the Desert, just go over to jimmychurchradio.com and click on Future, and you'll scroll down Future Events. Click on the Future page. Go down. It's right there. You can go over to Contact in the Desert and check out the lineup and everything that is going on out there. Okay, so later on this week, tomorrow night, Nick Redfern will be with us. We got a lot of stuff to talk to about with Nick. A lot of breaking news. We'll be doing the same thing tonight with Jim Mars. Lots of breaking news in the ufology world over the weekend. So we'll be talking with Jim tonight and Nick tomorrow. And then Wednesday, a true living legend, as if Jim Mars isn't enough. Look at Space Boy right there. I'm going to retweet this. Follow us on Twitter right now at JChurchRadio, and you can check out these pics. Oh, Method is popped up the new Fade to Black T-shirts. Those look really cool. There's two of them here that I'm looking at. The one with the alien triangle logo, and the other one says Fadernauts. Both are really, really cool. If you want to check those out, just come over to Twitter. You can see it in Twitter at JChurchRadio, hashtag F2B, or just go over to the Faders website, www.faders.com, and you're going to have to navigate through that. I'm not sure. Is it on the store page? I don't know, T-shirts. But everything is over at faders.org. It's not .com, .org, www.faders.org. Get yourself a Faders T-shirt. All right. What was I saying? Oh, Wednesday, Story Musgrave is going to be with us. A genuine astronaut. 6 flights on the shuttle. He was in the Apollo program. Marine pilot in the Korean War. A truly astounding life with Story. And, you know, all of us, we all want what's best for us. I got to tell you, Story has lived 10 lives. We're going to try to discuss one. And also STS-80. on Wednesday night. Story Musgrave, an astronaut on the show. All right, let's get the show cracking. We got a lot to do tonight. And I am ready. Everybody is tweeting left and right, breaking news. I see all of this. Yes, okay, I'll retweet. If you want to see what's going on Twitter, just follow us at JChurchRadio. Any comments and suggestions for the show, Jimmy at jimmychurchradio.com. Like I said, we have so many different sources now. We have TalkStream Live. We have a TalkStream Live call-in number where if you are having data stream issues or you're in a spot where you're skipping around or maybe you're driving and you've got unlimited minutes, just dial the number. It's free. It's free. You can just listen to the show live for free. Well, everything's free listening to us live, but and it's a really cool call-in number. If you want the call-in number, it is on the front of our website. And I know that went live today. I just cut a commercial for it, so you have to go and listen. Tell me what you think. All right? Okay, today, let's get the show cracking. Today, my good friend Ice-T, 57 years old. Oh, Ice-T, 57. All right, I'm going to move on from that. Ice, you demand. You know what I'm talking about. Also today, drummer Dave Lombardo, Slayer, 50 years old. The double kick king. Guitarist Andy Taylor is 54. You know, Duran Duran, Power Station, all that stuff. He is 54 years old today. Duran Duran was probably, I don't know, was there a more successful band in the 80s? Duran Duran, Van Halen. Who else was king of the 80s like that sold that many records? It's kind of hard to think about, isn't it? Duran Duran, they were at the top of their game. Our dead guy's birthday today is Sonny Bono. 1935 to 1998. We all know about him and Cher, Sonny and Cher, I Got You, Babe, and their television show. He was the 16th mayor. After his music career, he went into politics, and he was the 16th mayor of Palm Springs, California from 1988 to 1992. Was a member of the U.S. House of Representatives from California's 44th District from 1995 until his death. Bono died he died January 5th, 1998, of injuries sustained when he hit a tree while skiing on the Nevada side of the Heavenly Ski Resort near South Lake Tahoe, California. But the crazy thing about that, if you remember, he died just a little less than a week after Michael Kennedy, son of Robert F. Kennedy, died in a similar skiing accident in Aspen, Colorado. That was a nutty week in U.S. history. Both hitting trees. It was a pretty crazy time. Sonny Bono, 1935, died in 1998. His birthday today. Sonny, happy birthday. All right, today, let's see, Twitter. How do we fire up Twitter? I didn't really give this much thought. Today is President's Day. You know what? Let's fire up a President's Day question. Renee, one of our producers here, sent this to me, and I was like, man, it's too political. It's too political. Let's do something fun. And then I stopped and thought about it. You know, it's not that political. Who, when you think of a great U.S. president, today's President's Day, when you think of a great U.S. president, who comes to mind first? Who comes to mind first? The first guy that pops in your mind, I'm going to see it in Twitter right now. I've got my pick. I've got mine. I'll tell you mine after the break. This is Fade to Black only on the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Jim Mars will be with us. We're going to take some calls too, by the way. I promise you. Call-in number is 323-825-5045. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Email is Jimmy at jimmychurchradio.com. This is Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses, the Monday edition. Tonight, Jim Mars. You know how Jim is. We're going to light it up on about 20 subjects. And take your calls. I'll be back right after this. Stay with us.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
What's up, revolutionaries? It's me, Jimmy Church. Do you have an IRS or state tax issue? Well, I did, and I called national tax experts. My problems were fixed, done, fini, and man, I gotta tell you, it was a relief. National tax experts are a recognized tax office that services clients in all 50 states. It doesn't matter where you live. Give them a call. I'm telling you, they take the time to understand each and every client's individual financial status as well as their financial goals. And that's exactly what you need, my brother, when you're taking on the evil 3-letter. So, seriously, give them a call today at 1-877-909-5444. Again, 1-877-909-5444. Or go check out their website, www.nattaxexperts.com. That's NATTAXEXPERTS.com. Tell them Jimmy sent you.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Welcome to everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States. Bespoke radio for the masses, only on the Game Changer Network. All right. It's a tie. I'm going to tell you right now, it's a tie. 2 greatest presidents, it's a tie. I'm going to play, I can't help it. It's like the politically incorrect way to do this. John F. Kennedy and Ronald Reagan. That's right. That's it. Those are my picks. It's a tie. You can't pick one of those guys over the other. You can't do it. JFK, enough said. Ronald Reagan, put the fear of God in the world. Made you proud to be an American. All right, so it's a tie. All right, send all the email to Rita at jimmychurchradio.com. That's what you want to do, all the hate mail. You can send it straight to her. It's a tie. All right, let's get to some breaking news. Egyptian warplanes staged a second wave of airstrikes against ISIS targets today in Libya. The Egyptian Foreign Ministry said that the airstrikes targeted ISIS locations in Derna. The airstrikes followed an earlier wave that struck ISIS camps, training areas, and weapons depots. It wasn't immediately clear how much damage and casualties the airstrikes might have caused, but the Egyptian Foreign Ministry said the airstrikes targeted ISIS locations in and around Derna. It wasn't immediately clear, and I don't know why we don't have too much more information on that, but the bombing raids came after ISIS released that video over the weekend that appeared to show the militants beheading men that they said were Christians on a beach. Now, I got to say, I'm tired of these videos. I think everybody is tired of this, and it weighs on my brain and my emotions. I can't deal with it anymore. I'm just I didn't watch it. I didn't want to read the stories. It's too gruesome, and I just can't believe this goes on this beautiful planet of ours. I can't believe that this is going on. Parading men in cages. Burning men alive in cage. I just can't. It's insane. And I don't know if it is just some false flag CIA created videos, if this is the real deal. I don't know, but I'm just getting tired of it, man. I'm getting tired. And now today, a recent poll suggests that 3 out of 4 Americans now want a war with ISIS. And there are reports now around the web over the last 24 hours that a brigade of 4,000 soldiers, United States soldiers, are headed for Kuwait. And they've been training for this exercise or this incursion, whatever, for the last year. I can't get any official reports on this, but they're all over the web right now. And it appears that those videos have worked. Everything in Paris and Copenhagen, it's out of control. Out of control. I don't know what else to do. I personally, emotionally, I've almost checked out. And I'm sure you feel the same way. Outgoing, now all weekend long, we heard about this, not only in our circles, but it went mainstream. Outgoing senior U.S. presidential advisor, that's right, John Podesta, has revealed that the main regret of the past year, 2014, of his service at the White House was keeping Americans away from learning the truth about UFOs. Law professor Podesta published in his Twitter microblog on Friday, his last day as Obama's counselor with a special interest in climate and energy matters, a list of his favorite memories of the year, concluding with the biggest regret that once again it proves his fascination with aliens and the TV show X-Files. Everybody knows he was a fan of that show. And his tweet, and I'm quoting here, it had the number one, it had a descending order. Number one, his number one regret was, finally, my biggest failure of 2014, once again not securing the disclosure of the UFO files. Now, we all know about his famous quote back in 2002. I'll read it here. Quote, "It's time to find out what the truth really is that's out there. We ought to do it, really, because it's right. We ought to do it, quite frankly, because the American people can handle the truth. And we ought to do it because it's the law." End quote. John Podesta. We'll be talking about that tonight with Jim Mars, of course. Bottom of the hour, few minutes. Hidden away in the secret depths of skunkworks, a Lockheed Martin research team has been working quietly on a nuclear energy concept they believe has the potential to meet, if not eventually decrease, the world's insatiable demand for power. Dubbed the Compact Fusion Reactor, the CFR, the device is conceptually safer, cleaner, and more powerful than much larger current nuclear systems that rely on fission, the process of splitting atoms to release energy. Crucially, by being compact, Lockheed believes it is this scalable concept will also be small and practical enough for applications ranging from interplanetary spacecraft and commercial ships to city power stations. It may even revive the concept of large nuclear-powered aircraft that virtually never require refueling, ideas of which were largely abandoned 50 years ago because of the dangers of fission reactors. Although the company released limited information on the CFR in 2013, Lockheed is now providing new details of its invention. Just go to lockheedmartin.com. Check it out. U.S. scientists and legal experts are calling for a strong international authority to regulate any man-made interventions meant to combat global warming, amid fears that the technology would be harmful to the environment, i.e. chemtrails, HAARP. The field known as geoengineering is not currently regulated by any institution or treaty. Edward Parson, professor of environmental law at the University of California, Los Angeles, explained on Saturday over the weekend. He said, geoengineering, which covers an array of climate manipulation, includes everything from reflecting sunlight from the Earth's surface to sucking carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. The topic made headlines last week when the U.S. National Academy of Sciences released 2 reports by a committee of experts calling for more research into geoengineering and warning that the technology at present can pose significant risk. The scientists also emphasized that the technology could be no longer substituted for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, the most sound approach for fighting global warming. The U.S. Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, unveiled preliminary guidelines on the use of small commercial drones in the country over the weekend. The draft regulation prohibits the use of unmanned aircrafts out of sight of a pilot. Under the new FAA proposal, drones that weigh less than 55 pounds will be able to fly up to 500 feet and at speeds up to 100 miles per hour. Drone operators would have to not be younger than 17 years old, pass an aeronautics test, obtain a special unmanned operating certificate, and follow a handful of restrictions, including keeping the drone within sight, avoiding hazards like restricted airspace, people, airports, and other planes. Night flights are prohibited under the proposed regulations. Commercial drone use is estimated to create 70,000 jobs during the first 3 years of full implementation, according to the Association for Unmanned Vehicle Systems International. Wow. The House Speaker, John Boehner, said Sunday, this is the other big news over the weekend, that they're going to try to shut down the Department of Homeland Security, raising the possibility that one of the government's largest and most vital agencies could be shut down at the end of the month. That's right, 240,000 person department. Lawmakers are gone from Washington until next week, meaning that they have just 4 days in the Capitol to reach a deal before the department's funding runs out on February 27th. Man, oh man. The real reason, everybody sit down, get closer to your speakers, put your headphones in. The real reason new college grads can't get hired, it's because college kids today can't read, can't do math, or they don't know science, or they're clueless about technology, aside from Facebook. But the problem with the unemployability of these young adults goes way beyond the lack of STEM skills. As it turns out, they can't even show up on time in a button-down shirt and organize a team project. The technical term for navigating a workplace effectively might be soft skills. But employers are facing some hard facts. The entry-level candidates who are on tap to join the ranks of full-time work are clueless about the fundamentals of office life. A survey by the Workforce Solutions Group in St. Louis at the St. Louis Community College says that more than 60% of employers say applicants lack communication and interpersonal skills, a jump of about 10% in the last 2 years. A wide margin of managers also say today's applicants can't think critically and creatively. They can't solve problems or write well. Another employer survey, this one by staffing company Adecco, turns up similar results. The company says in a statement, 44% of respondents cited soft skills such as communication, critical thinking, creativity, and collaboration as the area with the biggest gap. So, you want to get hired? You in college? You better go and get an internship and complete it. Show up to work with a button-down shirt on time, and then apply at that company. Today, you have to prove yourself first. That's right. You guys ready for Jim Mars? Are you ready for Jim Mars? Let's get the show cracking. It's about that time. It's going to be a great night here on Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Jim Mars. Tomorrow night, Nick Redfern's going to be joining us. And then Wednesday, astronaut Story Musgrave. This is Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses, only on the Game Changer Network. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Shoot me an email, Jimmy@JimmyChurchRadio.com. I'll be back with Jim Mars right after this. Stay with us.
Jimmy is your preacher. Amen. This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And this is Ari Gold.
We're of the Honey Brothers.
Yes.
We're of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And I'm Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
And you're listening to Jimmy Church.
The Revolution.
KJCR. JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will.
Oh yeah, welcome back. Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Follow us on Twitter right now at JChurchRadio. Got any questions for myself or Mr. Mars? At JChurchRadio, hashtag F2BQ. That's Fade to Black questions. You can also shoot me an email to jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. I am ready. Very excited. Jim Mars is a Texas journalist and an author of 4 New York Times best-selling books. His latest book, Our Occulted History, concerns... Oh, wait a minute. That's not his latest book. I've got the old bio here, Jim. I'm so embarrassed. After a leave of absence from his newspaper job, he went to serve with the 4th Army Intelligence Unit during the Vietnam War. He became a military and aerospace writer and an investigative reporter. Mars has appeared on ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, C-SPAN, and the Discovery, Learning, and History channels, Good Morning America, Geraldo, Montel Williams, The Today Show, Tech TV, and Larry King Live, and George Norrie, myself, Art Bell, Alex Jones, and Jeff Rentz. And over this past weekend, I had the honor and the privilege to watch Jim accept a Lifetime Achievement Award from George Norrie. And I was actually allowed to step up and say a few kind words at that ceremony. I would like to welcome back to the program. It is indeed an honor. Jim Mars, live from Texas. Jim, how are you tonight, sir?
Oh, I'm doing just great. And Jimmy, I want to thank you so much for the kind words you said to me. Your check is in the mail.
You know what, Jim? It was such an honor not only to get up there, but to speak to you before you got up there, too, as well, just to let you know, and I said this on stage, too, but privately, and now I'll just say it out to the world right now, that, it's not about anything but this moment and this evening, and, just to enjoy it, let your hair hang down and have a good time, and we did, and congratulations.
Well, thank you very much. You want to hear an interesting little story that kind of props up a real point of mine, which is basically that we never quite know what we're actually accomplishing in this world.
Talk to me, Jim.
Okay, well, you were at the Conscious Life Expo, right?
Yeah, with you.
You realize they had 12,000 people there?
Was that the most insane? Okay, I'm not going to cut you off. I know you want to finish your thought, but that was an amazing event with a lot of really spiritual, connected, feet on the ground people, just begging for knowledge, and it was great.
Exactly. And it was put on by a person, and I don't want to embarrass him, so I won't mention his name, but he came up to me, and I congratulated him on having such a huge crowd of people there in Los Angeles to meet and to try to learn the truth about what's going on in our country, our world, our universe. And he said, well, he said he thanked me because I'm the one that got him started. He said he read my book years ago, Ruled by Secrecy, and it changed his life, made him wake up, made him see what was really going on in the world. And from that point on, he had been working to share that knowledge. Now, isn't that something?
And he was sitting in the front row that night, too. I saw him.
Right. And the point is that I sit down here in the wilds of North Texas and sometimes riding away, and I wonder, often I wonder, actually, is there anybody out there reading this stuff? And then you hear something like that, and it really makes it all worthwhile. And I say this to you, Jimmy, because you're on the radio, you have a show, you're a host, you have people in, you are expanding the education with a small e and with the knowledge. So you're playing a role in this too, but more importantly, I'm addressing this to your whole audience. Everyone out there, everyone who hears my voice, you have a role to play. There's something you can do. Nobody's left out, and nobody is meaningless. Everybody has something they can do, even if it's just talking to your family or your friends or your neighbors. You know, or you can write a letter to the editor, or you can write something for your school paper, or you can write to your congressman, but you can do something, okay? And so let's all do something, and let's make this world a better place.
When you were at the conference, by the way, and you know, you're very recognizable. I think it's the hat. But aside from that,
I think it's the hat.
I think it's the hat. But you know, everybody's coming up to you and you know, obviously saying thank you. But did anybody share anything with you? One of the attendees that you came away from the conference just going, "Wow, that was profound."
Oh, absolutely. It happens to me every time I go and attend a public event. Invariably, there's one or more people who come up and say, "Hey, let me tell you what happened to me." You know, and sometimes it is really, really profound. And then sometimes it's like, I remember I was at some event and this woman came up and, you know, it was really hectic. You know, I don't have to tell you, Jimmy, you know how it is. And she's tugging at my sleeve and she's going, "Listen," and she's trying to tell me about her abduction experience. She was taken aboard a ship and they were poking and probing and, you know, and I guess I looked off or, you know, didn't give her my full attention. And she finally said, aren't you interested in my story? And I said, "Well, yes, ma'am, I am." I said, "But I got to tell you, yours is one of about 100 such stories that I have heard, you know." And it's true. And I mean, and I feel bad because I understand to her that was probably one of the biggest things that ever happened to her. That was her huge story. But, you know, when you put it in perspective, it's happening to a lot of people. There's a lot of stuff going on, as you well know.
Well, you know, at Conscious Life, and I think, you know, and I saw all of your presentations too as well, one of the things that was on everybody's mind was the breaking news all last week of Brian Williams. And it wasn't Brian Williams, but it was the fact that everybody...
he actually... Hey, wait a minute. Brian Williams, think about this for a minute, folks. Brian Williams is the only person that's been punished for lying to us about Iraq. Wait a minute. What about W? What about Rumsfeld? What about Dick Cheney? What about Colin Powell? See, people don't... The news media, the mainstream corporate media, they just will not pin these liars to the wall. Okay? Colin Powell, it is now well documented, but most people don't know, that even before he went to the United Nations and made his big speech about how Saddam Hussein was about to get a nuclear weapon and use it to strike us and that they had weapons of mass destruction, he threw the papers in the air and said, "This is bullshit." He knew it. He knew it wasn't right. And yet he went and laid out the whole groundwork, and the next thing he knew, we were invading Iraq, even though later President Bush himself honestly and frankly admitted that Iraq had nothing whatsoever to do with the 9/11 attacks, and he ought to know.
And so for everybody, everybody wanted to talk about not so much Brian Williams, but that all of their greatest fears about mainstream media just got confirmed. You know,
exactly.
That it's just been one big lie. And that is what was on everybody's mind. Wasn't it amazing how it was just one question after another about, you know, conspiracy with the media? It was all weekend long.
Exactly. And like you said, I don't think it was, to most people, especially those attending the Conscious Life Expo, I don't think it was any great revelation,
No.
but it was confirmation
Right.
of what we kind of knew all along, you know?
And I don't think it's over for Brian once that can of worms has been cracked. You know, there's way too many guys out there that are going to just find and listen to every word, everything that he has ever said about anything. You know, in the last couple of days I was reading now, it's all about his stories about him hanging out with SEAL Team 6 on missions. And that's a tough one to swallow, really.
Well, you know what, though, that even goes back to a greater question, which is how come it is that everybody not everybody, but so many people within the CIA, within the FBI, and up to and including Madeleine Albright, our former Secretary of State, have all stated that Osama bin Laden died of medical complications before the end of 2001.
Right.
Okay? And so who did these guys, SEAL Team 6, who did they actually kill? I'm sure they were told they're going after Osama bin Laden. I'm sure they attacked that house. I'm sure they killed somebody in there. But was it really Osama bin Laden? Well, we'll never know because they threw the body in the ocean, right? And then most of the SEAL team members, the ones who could actually tell us what actually happened, oh, gee, they got lost in a helicopter crash in Afghanistan. How convenient.
Yeah, I saw a tape the other day. Brian Williams was saying, and then when I was hanging out with Hendrix, I said, you should do the national anthem, man. I think that would be a really cool thing.
Well, I guess you've seen the one that's floating around the internet right now that shows Brian Williams standing beside Abraham Lincoln. There's a new photograph that's emerged from the war between the states. No, here's a good one for you, Jimmy. There's a new definition for conspiracy theorist. Are you ready?
Ready.
Someone who questions the statements and actions of proven and repeated liars.
You think?
You think?
I saw a meme the other day on Facebook. It was pretty funny. It said, it's got Brian Williams, and he's like talking to David Letterman or somebody, and it's so I told Michael Jackson, wear just one glove. It's never going to stop.
Right.
It's just never going to stop. It's never going to stop.
I suppose he told Adolf Hitler, trim your mustache.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And again, is he a scapegoat? Is he the fall guy for a bunch of disinformation that was put out by, NBC?
Well, that has to be the truth because you know damn well that executives, higher-ups, his editors, bosses, they knew what was true and what was not. And the fact that he was allowed to go on for so many years spreading these stories and touting himself, means that at very best they just, acquiesced with it, okay? And at worst, they may have encouraged him.
Well, as they say in journalism, when it comes to stuff like this, the more sensational the story, the less you vet it because it's too sensational. So you just don't vet it. It must be true. And then,
or as we always used to say, don't ruin a good story with the facts.
Yeah, right. You just don't want to do it, and I get that. And it's just like, Brian Williams can't fib, can he? It's got to be true. And so there you go. Hey,
well, you know what? That reminds me. See, that's why I'm not NBC news anchor because I just tell the truth as I see it and as I find it. And the proof of that is that I don't know if you've ever seen that picture of me dancing in Jack Ruby's club.
Yes.
It was taken a month before the Kennedy assassination. So I can prove that I was in Jack Ruby's club, and if I went and dug up my old roommates, I could prove that I actually met Jack Ruby, just a few weeks prior to the assassination. Okay, so since I could prove that, just think about it, Jimmy. I could tell all kinds of wild stories, couldn't I?
So I said.
Jack told me. Jack told me this. Jack told me that. Jack introduced me to Lee Harvey Oswald.
Yeah, right.
Blah 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 blah. But I had never done that. I've never even attempted to do that because it's not true. Yes, I met him, but hey, I was a 20-year-old kid. I was more interested in the dancing girls.
Do you think every other guy that's sitting, and I'm talking, let's go to Wolf Blitzer or Anderson Cooper or anybody else that does the nightly news now on any network? Do you think those guys are sweating a little bit and wondering what they were spewing out live on the air?
Well, that's what happens when in England they have a much more correct title. They don't call them anchors; they call them presenters, and that's very much more accurate, right? Because all they do is rip and read.
Right.
They read the teleprompter, and so I have often wondered, do they ever stop to think, am I regurgitating truth or am I just spreading propaganda? But frankly, Jimmy, I don't think they worry about it very much. When you're making a few million a year, why rock the boat?
Well, most stuff is, all the news today, well, it all comes from Reuters, owned by the Rothschilds. But aside from that, all the news, really, it's news by committee. Before it ever gets to the teleprompter, you're talking about a production meeting, and I'm going to tell you right now, probably lawyers are involved. If something is a little bit too crazy, then the legal department steps in, and by the time it gets to the teleprompter, it's safe to air. It's safe
so
to
watered
read.
down.
Right.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you how bad it is, because and this may be a few years out of date, but I'm assuming it's probably still true. Most TV, radio stations, newspapers all around the country get their foreign news from the Associated Press, right? And the Associated Press has a big headquarters in New York City, in which there is something called the Foreign Desk, okay? Now, this is just one office manned by a certain editor that comes in shifts. So 24/7, there's somebody here on this Foreign Desk, and they take all the news that comes from outside the United States, and they go through it and decide what goes on the AP wire and what does not. And not only that, but if they put it on the AP wire and they mark it, it used to be on the old teletype machines with bells. If you got 4 or 5 bells, that's really important news. If you didn't get any bells, then you can let that one slide, put it back on the classified ad page. Okay, and today, of course, it's all computer, so they probably don't have bells, but they've got little urgent and things like that to tell these editors, here's the real news, and here's one, and then they send the news they don't really want anybody to know about, send that through about 3 in the morning, and most time those little stories never even actually reach the newspaper. Now, how's that? So one person decides everything we see and hear that comes from out of the country. How's that for control of the news?
Yeah, and his paycheck, AP, was bought by Reuters, so that's under that umbrella, which falls right. I hate to say the Rothschild so many times, but everybody needs to understand most of the 99% of everything that you get, hear, read on a national and international level comes from one source, technically to AP and Reuters, but it's all owned by one. How can that be? Doesn't that fall under some kind of monopoly rules?
Well, yes, of course, and there used to be laws against that, but see, they kind of did away with all that. In fact, I watched all that happen in my professional career. When I first started working for a big city newspaper, it was owned by a local family, and they also owned the local NBC affiliate and a radio station. But then during the Reagan years, when neocons came to the fore, and they were going, it's not right for one person or one family to own all the media in a particular market. So they started cracking down, and they said you have to divest yourself. So in the case I'm familiar with, the family sold the newspaper and sold the radio station, and they just kept the ownership of the television station. Okay, and then the newspaper and the radio station were bought up by a big corporation, which in turn was bought up by another corporation. And then at the time of the Bush administration, you had Michael Powell, Colin Powell's son, in charge of the FCC.
Right.
And he said, it's not so bad if one entity owns all of the media outlets. And so they reversed themselves, and by now all the corporations, the 5 corporations, had bought up all of the major TV, radio stations, and now it's all under solid control, like you said, of actually 5 corporations, but then they're headed by interlocking directorships and ownerships and controlled by the AP and Reuters, and like you said, it's all under tight control again.
Yeah.
Only this time, instead of spread out among American families, some of whom may have been conservative, some of whom might have been liberal, some of whom might have been really dedicated to good journalism, and others might have been propaganda sheets, but now it's all under the total control of the single entity.
Well, I'll give you an example for our listeners here. How does this affect you directly? Let me give you an example, and I want your comments on this, Jim. There was, I'm going to go back about 15 years, and when all of the radio stations across the United States were getting snapped up and then they would have like one DJ in Denver or whatever. Here in LA would be, with automatic, it's called automated voice, would broadcast across 100 stations at once across the United States, and nobody knew that it was one DJ, that was broadcasting. But anyway, so they snapped up all of these local stations up in Montana. And then one weekend, a huge forest fire broke out. Now, when all of those radio stations got snapped up around one of the towns up there, all of the staffs were fired. They were fired because they went to the automation system. One guy, right? Now, this huge...
But it saves them money.
Saves them money. Now, meanwhile... this forest fire breaks out. Lives are in danger. It's closing in on this town, and everybody's switching their radios to the local stations, and they're playing music. Mm-hmm. There's nobody at the people are calling the station to get, report what's going on and to find out what's going on, and nobody's picking up the phone because nobody's there at the four local stations. Luckily, one of the stations didn't sell out up there, and it was like this classic rock station, and these DJs had to stay live on the air for like a week, and I'm not kidding, broadcasting live. But for a couple of days leading up to this, nobody had any way of listening until they found out that, this one station is actually live, and everybody was able to listen there. But that is the problem with this.
Exactly.
That's how our communities are directly affected when corporations come in and buy everything. Now other laws are in place, and you're supposed to have a station engineer that's there. You don't have to have a full staff of 20 people or 10 people, but you need to have somebody there live at the station. But that's it. That's how we are directly affected. And doesn't that send a message to you as a journalist that is exactly why we don't want a monopoly in mass media?
Exactly. At one time, of course, you go back to the turn of the century in New York City, and I forget the exact number, but there's like maybe 24 newspapers. And now you have 2. And that's pretty incredible because in Fort Worth and Dallas, which used to have 4 or 5, now only has 2. You got one paper in Fort Worth and one paper in Dallas. And it's really, it's not good at all. In fact, let me tell you, Jimmy, it's even worse than that. And of course, your background experiences with radio and mine, even though I've been familiar in and out of radio stations all my career, mine is predominantly print news. It used to be, it's a newspaper in Fort Worth and Dallas, that if you had a big story, let's say you worked for the city and you found out about some real criminal activity going on, you could go down to the newspaper, just walk in, go up to the editorial department, and ask to speak to a reporter. You could go back to Sentinel Room, tell him the story. If he saw that you had a real story, he'd call in a few editors. They'd listen to your story, and then they're going to say, "Can you prove this?" So if you were really good and a true whistleblower, you'd have some documents, photographs, who knows what.
Right.
And chances are they'd run the story, and it would clean up the city. Okay. Before I left, you couldn't even get to the newsroom because you had to go through a security check, at the front door with a security guard. And they had to sign in and leave your name and your address and phone number. Well, what whistleblower is going to do that? And, and it just totally, and the other thing is that we had what we call the morgue, okay, which was basically a library with old clippings from the newspapers dating all the way back to the 1800s. Okay, and if you were working on a story and you said, well, that name sounds familiar, or I've heard that company before, you go back to the morgue and you go to the files and you find stories that, oh, hey, this new housing project just happens to be under the contractor is the son of the mayor. And that's how you found out things, okay?
Right.
Kept things on the up and up. But hey, when the corporation took over, they wanted to save some money, so they did away with the morgue. So now you got no history, no community history, and you can't even get to the people who are trying to write the things. And as far as I'm concerned, it pretty much destroyed all the basic precepts of journalism, good journalism.
What do you think? There's two breaking stories that are right up your alley. I know you have comments on both over the weekend. The first, Homeland Security possibly being shut down. The Democrats and what they're saying there about that, and also John Podesta and his famous tweet that he did on Friday
about the UFOs.
Yeah. Let's start with Homeland.
Well, wait. First, let's go to Podesta. Inform your audience, though, there may be some who didn't hear that news. So tell them what the deal is.
Yeah, I read it at the top of the hour. I'll read it again. The quote that he did, the tweet was, right. I have it here. He says, and I'm quoting, "Finally, my biggest failure of 2014." Once again, not securing the disclosure of the UFO files. End of quote.
Yeah. Okay, and he's not the only one. Let's talk about Webster Hubbell. Webster Hubbell was a lawyer and a good close buddy and a golfing partner of Bill Clinton. And when Bill Clinton got to be president, he named Webster Hubbell as an associate attorney general of the United States and sent him to the Justice Department. And in his memoirs, Hubbell said that Clinton asked him to find out two things. He wanted to know who killed John F. Kennedy and what's the truth about the UFOs. And Hubbell said he was unable to get to the facts on either one of those subjects. So now think about that just for a minute, folks. Here we've got Podesta, here we've got Webster Hubbell on orders of President of the United States, and they can't get to the information. So who is in charge? And why is it so serious that even the President of the United States can't get to it?
Or Hillary, who is actually the real president. And don't forget.
She may be one.
Right.
She doesn't know about aliens because she is one.
Slow down, Jim. Okay, we'll get to that in a second.
No.
But you remember, Lawrence Rockefeller.
He tried to get to it.
He tried to get to it, and he gave Hillary. What was that book that he gave her? Oh man. Somebody will tweet it here in just a second. But it really seemed that they were wanting to know, and I'm talking about the Prez, the First Lady, Podesta, Hubbell, and you got Rockefeller too. And were they all stonewalled, or did they all know something and they just couldn't reveal it?
Well, if you follow what is out there in the public thing, what Podesta said, what Webster Hubbell said on behalf of Clinton, they can't get to it. It's held at secret, and it's not like there's nothing there, folks. There's something there, folks, but we can't find out the truth of it. Which shows you that there's higher authority in this country than even the President of the United States. And that brings me back to a story goes back years ago when Barry Goldwater, who was very, very powerful and conservative senator, okay, and was good friends with, I believe it was Curtis LeMay, who at that time was head of the Air Force, okay, and he heard all the stories about the aliens from Roswell being taken to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, put in a hangar there, and he actually went there and tried to get in. And here he is, one of the most powerful senators in Washington. They wouldn't let him in. And so he went to his buddy, I think it was Curtis LeMay, and said, hey, I want to get in and find out what's going on. And he said for the first and only time, LeMay got really mad with him and said, you have no business. That's above your knowledge. And he said, get out here and don't ever ask me about that again.
Yeah,
wow.
Didn't he tell him to, shut up?
Yeah.
Yeah, he said, never talk to me about that again. I heard it was like in a very angry tone.
Oh, yeah, just threw a hissy fit.
Can you imagine pissing off LeMay, of all the guys?
No, you don't want to do that.
I mean, of all the guys.
Now let's look right now at people who are still living. We've got Paul Hellyer, who is a former defense minister of Canada and had all access to all the military secrets they had. And he said, yes, there's aliens. And yes, they've been visiting here. In fact, we've gotten technology from them. Now, let's see. Now we've got Dr. Edgar Mitchell, the sixth man to walk on the moon. U.S. astronaut and a military officer, and he has publicly said, yes, we've gotten advanced technology from aliens. And now we have Karen Hughes, who for 25 years was a high-ranking attorney for the World Bank, and she says that at the top of the financial pyramid, they're not human. Okay? Now, I'm sitting here, I'm just Jim Mars, reporter from Texas. As far as I know, I've never met an alien. I can't tell you if any of that's true. I'm telling you there are people with good credentials who have been in positions to know what they're talking about, and they're trying to tell us that it's all very real. And yet, Jimmy, you know as well as I do, if you and I go out and try to tell our friends and or neighbors and or family that, hey, there's aliens here, then they just roll their eyes and laugh at us and say, you know, we may be lucky if they don't ship us off for psychiatric evaluation.
Renee, one of our producers here, just sent me this question on this subject. She says, in your opinion, have ETs not openly revealed themselves en masse due to their own perception of humanity as not yet ready for this, or because our black ops are telling ETs that we're not ready?
A little combination of both, but mostly I think it's because of what the Star Trek people call the prime directive, which is, if it's not an absolute law, in the definition of a law as we understand it, where it's codified, and if you break it, then there are authorities who will come and arrest you and prosecute you. At least it's a universal understanding and agreement that it is not proper to interfere with the natural evolution of a species. Okay? Now, I think that within that general prime directive, there's several species who are, you know, wandering into a gray area. In fact, think about this, Jimmy. What if the crash at Roswell was an intentional crash, and it was an effort to give us alien technology, but they can always claim, well, it was an accident. We didn't give them anything. We didn't violate the prime directive. We just had an accident, and they got hold of the technology. Yeah. And I'm not saying that's the case. I'm saying that's possible. So I think we've got, and then, of course, we have the famous story, which has never been totally debunked, although there's plenty of people go, that didn't happen, that can't happen. But that is the meeting with Eisenhower and ETs. And they tried to say, look, you know, we'd like to work with you, and all you got to do is let everybody know we're here, and we can start working with you, and we'll smooth out some of the problems here on Earth. And they were basically told no, because the power structures do not want to give up their power. The people who control the monopolies over transportation and energy, communications, they don't want their technologies threatened. They don't really care if we know there's aliens out there, but if we know for certain that there's aliens, then we'll know for certain that there's alternative technologies out there. And why should we keep paying all these high prices for gasoline and polluting the planet on top of that when we can have, everybody could have free energy?
What do you believe? Do you think, do you believe personally that we're ready for this?
Oh, I think so. The leadership's not ready, but I think the people are. And that's why that early on, the contact was with governments. In fact, if you'll remember the old original movie, The Day the Earth Stood Still, right?
Right.
Lands on the White House lawn or whatever, says we come in peace, and then immediately gets shot. And that's not so far out, because if you go back, you'll find, going to the late 40s, early 50s, the military sent out orders to shoot down UFOs. And every time these military pilots would sight one, they'd chase it, try to fire machine guns at it, rock it, you know. And then what happened? For about a year, there was a whole spate of airline crashes. They were just dropping out of the skies. And finally, cooler heads prevailed, and they said, okay, and they rescinded these shoot-down orders. In fact, they sent out orders saying, if you see a UFO, just report it. Do not shoot at it. And the airline crashes stopped. So there was kind of a little sub rosa UFO war going on there for a while.
If you look back, when you look at humanity in general, with Columbus and Balboa and what went on in South America for the first time when the natives saw these advanced, ships arriving to shore that they had never seen before, that wasn't peaceful either. And
no.
is that our reaction? You think that would be our reaction if something like that?
I think that goes back to the Brookings Institution report back in the early 50s. The government commissioned the Brookings Institution to do a study, and of course all they had to go by was our experiences here in past societies on Earth. And you're right. And they came back and said, every time a technologically advanced civilization has clashed with a lower, more primitive civilization, the more primitive one is either destroyed or absorbed. In either way, it's destroyed. Okay? And just like the North American natives, okay? And the islanders on the islands that Columbus sailed to. And they all got sicknesses and got killed, and they got pretty well wiped out.
Right.
Now, they gave us that report back in the early 50s. And keep in mind, that's, say, 1950, 1940, that's only 12 years away from the War of the Worlds broadcast by Orson Welles, and which panicked all these people. But then you have to understand that was a gentler time and place and a more naive time and place. The national polls in the 50s showed that virtually no one, 98% of the people queried, said they did not believe in any kind of life outside the Earth. It was just a more naive and unsophisticated time. And so at that time, and with the memory of the Orson Welles panic, because he went on the air and dramatized the H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds, and a lot of people panicked because they did not hear the beginning of the broadcast, which says, okay, this is the Mercury Theater of the Air, and we're going to put on this show. All right, all they did was get in the middle, and they did the thing like it was, we interrupt this music to bring you this news broadcast. These things have landed in New Jersey, and their machines are operating, and they're killing people, and they're destroying towns. Well, no wonder people panicked, And I think today, the polls show that we have been in a 70-year conditioning program, and that now the vast majority of people, 95% or so, believe that there probably is life outside the Earth. So I think if tomorrow President Obama comes on the TV and says, okay, we now have evidence to show that there are extraterrestrials and they have been visiting the Earth for a long time, and obviously their immediate goal or mission is not to invade the Earth and blow up cities and eat people, because if that was their goal, they would have done it a long time ago. So we think that they're just here, and we're working on it, and we see no reason for panic. And I don't think everybody would panic. I think we just kind of go on. There would be some soul searching on the part of a lot of people who have just been in total denial that anything like that is possible. But as far as chaos and society collapsing, I just personally don't think it would happen. I think we'd all just go, yeah, okay. For one thing, I'll give you an example. My wife was a school teacher for her whole career, taught high school. And one Christmas we went to a holiday party for the MUFON, Mutual UFO Network, and we were there with all these people, having a good time. We were heading home. I said, did you notice how most of the people there were our age or older? Just a bunch of older folks, I said, you teach those young kids. What about them? Aren't they interested in UFOs and extraterrestrials? And she just kind of rolled her eyes and said, well, they already know about that. And they do. They've grown up with it. They grew up with Star Trek and Star Wars and, R2-D2 and Han Solo. They know, to them it's no big deal.
Right.
It's only us old folks who were conditioned for years to the idea that that's folly-rol. It's not true. There's nothing there, folks. We're the ones having a hard time going, wait a minute, maybe there is something there.
Well, over the past weekend, also, we'll get to Homeland Security here in a second, but over the weekend, the reports were coming out from SETI about the dangers of us sending out, a call to ET, that we should, before we do that, let's stop and let's discuss this, because it's probably not a good idea, because we don't know how we're dealing with or who we're dealing with. And I read that, and the only thing, Jim, that really comes to mind, and it's logical, if there's an advanced civilization out there, I think the last thing on their mind is, hey, man, check this out. We found this planet. Looks pretty good. What do you say we go invade? Let's go take that. Let's go take that sucker over.
Well, there might even be somebody like that out there, but I think they're held in check by everybody else.
Right.
Well, you can't do that.
No, because
the main thing, here's the main thing. If the playing field's level and there's nothing else going on, and we have nothing in our historical record or in our history or anything that tells us there's anything other than what we've been taught, which is just us alone here on this world slowly evolving,
right,
then I would put more credence in the argument that maybe we ought to be careful about who we're contacting, because they may not be friendly. But the bald-faced fact is, if you'll actually look at the historical record, there have been these guys have been with us since the get-go. I mean, we got all the stories in the Bible: Ezekiel, the wheel, the destruction, the predetermined destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, angels who are visiting people, and even prior, thousands of years before the Bible, we've got the Sumerian tablets who tell us about the Anunnaki, those who came from the heavens and landed on the earth.
Right.
And then you got the flying dragons of the ancient Chinese, the flying boats of the Egyptians, flying shields during the Middle Ages. I mean, you got the crop circles and animal mutilations, and holy cow, the historical record tells us something's been here all along, and they hadn't invaded us up till now, so why would we think they're going to come and attack us when we have rail guns and space platforms and infrared weapons, when they didn't attack us when all we had was spears and bows and arrows?
Fly a mission, Jim. Drop a bomb. That was awesome. You're absolutely right. I never really looked at it in that context. If they were going to take over when we're wearing animal skins.
Yeah, exactly. and besides that, take us over when there's only a few million humans. Why wait till we're 7.5 billion?
Crazies.
Yeah, and most of North America with guns.
That's a really, really good point.
See, that's another thing too, and that may get us back to this Homeland Security thing.
Sure.
I have never had any real doubts about the fact that we are reasonably secure in Homeland here, because just picture yourself. Number one, with nuclear weapons, that pretty well does away with D-Day type landings. Yes, Chinese has got a lot of people, but how are they going to get them here? Okay,
right.
They're all going to ride bicycles across the Bering
Right,
Strait.
Come over in a freighter, a Chinese freighter.
They're going to have to build a kajillion boats to get all those soldiers over here. And the minute they get those kajillion boats gathered up to come and invade us, we just send one nuke on them. Boom, they're all gone. Same thing with the Russians. Same thing with anybody else. What kills me is now we're over fighting in the Middle East. What are we worried about? Yemen taking over the United States?
Right. There's a reason why.
Come on, folks. Use your common sense. And yeah, there's countries that can give us trouble, and there's countries that can, attack us, economically, if nothing else. In fact, that's the whole thing I've tried to tell people for a long time now. Don't worry about that Chinese soldier showing up at your door with a gun saying, I'm taking over your country. You need to be worried about that Chinese businessman who's going to show up with a bill of sale and said, I own your house.
Right. Yep, that's exactly right. It happened to Vancouver. So, sorry about that, Canada, but you know what I'm talking about. And so what do you think about this Homeland Security situation?
I think we ought to do away with it, okay? Because, number one, Obama just announced that all of this emergency continuity of government now is going to be carried out under the authority of Homeland Security. Now, that's just scary as hell, because it had been under the National Security Agency. Now, the National Security Agency is tasked with spying, okay? They can listen on your phone calls, They can listen in on all your emails. In fact, we all know, thanks to Edward Snowden, how bad it really is. But here's the thing: they're just a spy agency. Okay, they can't act on that information. But Homeland Security is a different animal. Homeland Security now entails and encompasses every police agency in this country. So now they not only can use the information they're getting from your telephone and your email and your iPhone and everything else, but now they can contact your local cops, tell them to come out, bust in your door, and raid your house. Okay, it's really scary. And Homeland Security, big deal, and under that, of course, is the precious transportation of, security, TSA, Transportation Safety Administration,
right.
Now, and all they've done is grope people and cause people hassles, cause so many millions of people to miss their flights, and my question is, how many terrorists has the TSA caught since its inception in about 2002? And the answer is 0, zip, none, not a one. Okay? All they've done is hassle the public, made the cost of travel go up, made the time wasted hanging around airports and getting there 2 hours early, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, now I'll admit I'm probably being an old fuddy-duddy because I can remember living in the Free Republic when if I had a flight at 10 o'clock in the morning, I'd get to the airport and have somebody drop me off at about 10 minutes till.
Right.
I'd run through the airport, jumping over suitcases like O.J. Simpson, and then run up the stairs, get on the plane, buckle in, and off we go. Now that's a free country.
Did I ever tell you I don't know if I told you this, my O.J. Simpson story in the airport?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, I actually lived that. I pulled up. I was in upstate New York, and I had to get down to JFK in like 4 hours to get to my flight back to LA. And we're driving pretty quick, and I'm with my friend. I'll think of his name here in a second. And so
never will forget. What's his name?
Yeah. Man, I'll think of it here in a second. So he's driving me to the airport. I'm on the phone with United. Okay, I'm going to be right there. I'm checking in right now. I'm on the phone, but I will be there. Don't give up my seat. Blah 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 blah. And so we pull up, and we pull up curbside, and I tell the attendant curbside, I'm like, dude, I'm flying first class. I got to get in there right now. My flight is leaving in like 10 minutes. He's like, man, okay, I got you. And I turn around, and I'm looking right as I turn around to speak to my friend, Greg. Think of his last name here in a second, Greg. I turn to Greg, and I'm looking eyeball to eyeball, literally nose to nose with O.J. Simpson. And we're curbside. And and I kind of lean over and I look at Greg, and he's looking at me, and we're kind of tripping because this was like a month after he was acquitted, right? I mean, he was.
So it's
right.
after the
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, this is after he was acquitted. So anyway, we grab my bags, we fly in, we go up to the counter. He not OJ, but the curbside guy, Skycap. Walks me to the front of the line, go right up, and who's standing next to me? OJ. And the lady at the counter says, she picks up the phone and says, okay, hold the doors. Passengers Church and Simpson are on their way. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not with Simpson. I'm not with Simpson.
You should have got him run interference for you.
So he turns, he looks at me, grabs his bags, and takes off. And I take off. She goes, they're holding the door. Go, go, go. So I take off, and I'm literally running through the airport with O.J. Simpson. Yeah. And all of these faces are turning and looking. And I'm like, man, I got to let him run a little bit in front of me. I don't need them to know that this is a true story. So we get to the gate. And they like grab our tickets. Okay, Church and Simpson, go. I'm like, man, it ain't Church and Simpson. It's me and that guy. I'm not with that guy. And we go in, and what do? They sit us next to. And so the plane is being held up. We go in. They shut the door. We get on the plane, and it's me and OJ. And I'm like, oh man, you're kidding me. So this is the best part. So then we're sitting next to each other. We're both on aisle seats. We're not sitting next to each other, but, he's sitting across from me in the aisle, and he falls asleep. Okay? Now, we're in first class. And what happens when you're in first class? One of the most irritating things. You fall asleep, but they wake you up. You want a drink? What do you want to eat? That's not what they did to OJ. Oh, no. Nobody talked to him. Nobody fed him. Nobody woke him up. Nobody did nothing. It was hilarious. And I just I thought, man, he's not getting any respect. Nobody would talk to him.
His reputation.
Yeah. Nobody asking for an autograph. Nothing like that. No pictures. I've seen Bobby Brown walk through the airport, and at least people want his picture, if you know what I'm saying. But
yeah.
but OJ, no, it was pretty weird. So and then when we get to L.A., we're getting off of the airplane, and he was in back of me, and right directly in back of me. I wouldn't turn around. We're getting off of the plane. And as I get down, my limo driver standing there, this guy, Steve, that I had been using for years. And so I go up to him and I turn around to go, dude, OJ's right. What? Where'd OJ go? And I'm looking around. I don't know how he did it, man, but they took him off somewhere on the gangway, whatever, the tunnel. There's some door there or something, but he did not.
Oh, he got out another way.
Yeah, he did not. I turned around, and he was not there. And I was I looked around, and he was nowhere to be seen. So he did some secret egress. I don't know how he did it, but he disappeared. Anyway, that's a long story for nothing. But it was just
that's a great story.
It was pretty trippy. It was pretty trippy.
Well, especially for someone like me that still remembers the pre-shooting ads, with him running through the airport.
Oh, yeah, totally. That's exactly what it was, too. Oh, man, I was living all of that minute for minute, and I'm serious. I was trying to separate myself from him, but I needed to catch the plane. So it was like I used him as a run blocker, and just he cleared everything out, and we got to the plane on time. So you think, what about the 240,000 Homeland Security jobs, though? What about that? Are they absorbed into other agencies?
Let them go get real work.
Oh, Jim. What about their? What about families?
Let me tell you something. J. Edgar Hoover, and of course we could have a whole program on his foibles and stuff, but at least he understood. He fought his entire career. He said the United States does not need a national police force. And of course, he wasn't doing this out of any altruism. He didn't want anything to be in conflict or competition with his FBI. But the thing is, he had it right. We don't need a national police force. This is what happened in Nazi Germany, okay? They were made up of local police and state police and provincial police, and those act as checks and balances on each other, and if one gets totally corrupt and out of control, then you can go to somebody else. Like right now in LA, if the LAPD just gets totally out of control, you can always turn to CHIPS, okay? You go to the highway state cops, and they can come in, investigate, and if they find wrongdoing, they can prosecute, and they can clear things up. Now, if the state police become corrupt, then you go to the FBI. Okay, well, the problem we have in this country today is, what if the FBI becomes corrupt, which it has, all right? In fact, I'm thinking of the FBI lab person, something White, and who blew the whistle and said that they were forging and fabricating evidence and lying about all kinds of things. And that's the FBI. And, of course, thanks to my research and study of the Kennedy assassination, I can assure you the FBI lies at the heart of it as far as damaging, altering, and generally messing with the evidence in that case, as with many others. Okay, so there's where you have a real problem. Now you get Homeland Security, and it's got the FBI, all the police agencies, all under one roof, and and if it becomes corrupt, then what do? You just screwed. And so, no, we do not need Homeland Security.
What about what Washington is going to say about Homeland Security, which is we haven't had any terrorist, real serious threats since then. all of these attempts at infiltrating the United States, once again, they've all been thwarted. We're on top of it.
They've also all involved an FBI informant. This has all been created. This is all smoking guns and false flags, okay? All the way back to 9/11. The 19 named hijackers were predominantly from Saudi Arabia, our buddies, our allies, the close business and social friends of the Bush family.
Right.
All right? And even out of those 19 hijackers, 7 of them were not even the ones that they still name. They all turned up alive somewhere. One of them said he had his passport stolen in a flight to Denver. And this was all reported in the BBC and in other media around the world, including the Saudi Arabian foreign minister got up into the news conference and vouched for this guy and said he couldn't be one of the hijackers. He's right here, And yet that's never been acknowledged, okay? The whole thing stinks to high heaven. You've got this plane that hit the Pentagon, as we're all told. And yet, I could send you a picture of the hole in the Pentagon before the wall collapsed. Now, when the wall collapsed, you got a big V-shaped gash in the Pentagon. It's easy enough to tell people that a plane crashed in there. But that wall collapsed only after more than an hour after the explosion. And if you get a picture of the hole before the wall collapsed, it's only 1 story high, about 12 foot, by about no wider than 20 foot. Okay, so how do you get an airplane with a 125-foot wingspan and a 4-story tall tail in a hole 12 feet tall and 20 feet wide? It just can't happen. The whole 9/11 thing, in fact, don't take my word for this. Just a minute. I want to quote to you from a guy named Farmer.
While you're looking that up, I'll say this. After the planes hit the towers, how, out of all of the restricted airspace on planet Earth, of all of the restricted airspace, how does a plane get into D.C. without getting shot down first?
Exactly.
That's my point.
And Jimmy, you know as well as I do that the Pentagon is one of the most protected buildings in the world. They even have automated anti-aircraft missile batteries around there. And if you fly into prohibited airspace and you are not sending a friendly transponder signal, they just open fire on you, okay? But now listen, don't listen to me. I want you to listen to John Farmer. Now, who's John Farmer? Well, John Farmer is a former attorney general in New Jersey, but he just happens to be the senior counsel to the official Bush handpicked 9/11 commission, okay, that was there to tell us what happened. And in his 2009 book, The Ground Truth, here's what he writes. In the course of our investigation into the national response to the attacks, the 9/11 Commission staff discovered that the official version of what had occurred that morning, that is, what government and military officials told Congress, the Commission, the media, and the public about who knew what and when, was almost entirely and inexplicably untrue. Okay? And then just make sure that we understood that on another page, the next page he says, at some level of the government, at some point in time, there was a decision not to tell the truth about what happened. Okay, folks, there you go. So all of these thousands of architects and engineers, more than 2,000 of them, scholars for 9/11 Truth, pilots for 9/11 Truth, who are all telling us that what they told us is not true, and now their own senior counsel of their own official commission says the story we were told is totally and inexplicably untrue. So I submit to you, what is the problem with someone like me or Jimmy or anybody else demanding the truth?
Well, let's go back to Operation Northwoods.
Exactly.
I mean, when you go and you read that, and I encourage anybody, look, don't, whatever you do, don't take Jim Mars or Jimmy Church, the two Jims, as the gospel truth. Don't do that. Don't do that. Go and
that's been the problem of we've been trusting the wrong people. So don't trust us or anybody.
Don't. But go and just read for yourself. And one of the things all of the listeners should go and check out when it comes to 9/11 or any false flag type situation that you might think would be there, go and read about Operation Northwoods. You read that, and that is one of the most bone-chilling what do you want to call it? Well, operations. Something that it was something that
it's an outline for a false flag.
Yeah, it's an outline complete down to the last detail,
Right.
specifically dealing with Cuba and Guantanamo Bay, on how they wanted to use Marines dressed up as Cubans to kill other Marines, so we could say that Cuba invaded Guantanamo Bay, so we could invade Cuba.
Well, it's even worse than that. They were going to have assassinations in U.S. cities, set off bombs, and blame it all on Castro. But the one I think you really need to pay attention to was their plan of taking a commercial airliner and then dressing up, painting up a similar aircraft to where it looked like the commercial airliner, and then send it by remote control over the Caribbean. And then at a certain point, they were going to signal a thing, and it was going to send out an automatic message saying, help, help, we've been attacked by Castro's jets. And then they, by remote detonation, they're going to blow up the plane and then blame it all on Castro so that we could launch another invasion of Cuba. Okay? Now, I submit to you that that was the base plan that was used on 9/11. Because now we all know about remote control aircraft and drones and all this stuff. In fact, when we invaded Afghanistan, the first planes that went in there were Global Hawks, which are unmanned, pilotless, remote controlled aircraft. And that was in the fall of 2001. And in fact, in, I believe it was August, or the summer of 2001, a month or so before 9/11, a Boeing 737 lifted off from Edwards Air Force Base there in California, flew to Australia, flew 12 missions successfully, and then flew back and landed at Edwards, and all the while with no one on board because they had perfected computer guidance, remote computer guidance of large wide-body jets, okay? Now, what they didn't know at the time, we know now, but a lot of people still don't know, is that you can capture the onboard computer of some of these big wide-bodied Boeing jets by remote control. You can take control over the computer from a distant point, either another aircraft or a ground station, and if your signal can overcome the signal in the airplane, then you can capture it. You can fly that airplane anywhere you want to, despite what hijackers want or even the crew wants.
Of course.
And you have to understand that. I knew this because I knew this back in the 80s because I did a story on a pilot, and we were talking at the end of me getting my information. He said, well, he said, my job's just redundant. And I said, well, whoa, hey, what do you mean? He said, he said, the computer flies the airplane. He said, I'm just there in case the computer breaks. So I was aware that they could capture and control aircraft remotely even before 9/11. And so when I heard that first day in all the news reports that all of the transponders on those 4 hijacked airplanes all went off at approximately the same time, I said, that is not possible. Oops, unless they were all computer captured at the same time.
Well, if you ever wonder about that technology, it's so simple, Jim. Just go out to any RC airplane club and go out on a weekend when they're out there flying all of their planes and jets, and go out there and just, that technology it's right there. It's right there.
It's been there for years, yeah. And furthermore, and you being familiar with radio, you know that if you have a CB radio and my transmitter is more powerful than yours, then I can, as they say, step on you, and you're going to hear me and not you, because I have a stronger signal.
That's right.
And that's what you do to take over the onboard computer. If you want to see how all this works and what actually happened on 9/11, just go on the internet and look up Chris Carter's pilot program for the Lone Gunman, their very first pilot program, which aired on March the 3rd, 2001, months before the 9/11 attack, and that means obviously that they were shooting this in 2000. Okay, and I won't go into the whole details, but the bottom line was it was people within the U.S. government who computer captured a commercial airliner under the guise of a war game exercise and was going to fly it into the World Trade Center and blame it on Mideast terrorists so they could get their budget increased.
That's scary.
And my friends, not only is that scary, But that's what happened on 9/11, and that's why I'm saying we don't need Homeland Security. We don't need the TSA. The only true terrorists, and yes, there are radical Muslims over in the Middle East, but look at ISIS. We've created ISIS. Last September, Obama said he was counteracting the law that says you can't arm terrorists, and because he wanted to arm the Syrian rebels so they could try to take out Assad. And he said that. He said that's why he was going to abrogate that section of the law so he could arm those people there. And, of course, those people turn out to be ISIS. We've armed them, we've created them, and they're all part of the old Muslim Brotherhood, which was taken over from the Nazis at the end of World War II by the British, who then couldn't hang on to them, so they turned them over to the CIA. And the CIA used them to fight the Russians in Afghanistan, but of course they didn't want to use the name Muslim Brotherhood because of its pro-Nazi connotation, so they changed the name to Al-Qaeda, which simply means, as was told to the British Parliament, that means the base, and it refers to the CIA's computer base of Arab mercenaries that they train and arm, and they'll do anything they're told to do.
What do you do, Jim? How does your frame of mind work? Let me get into the head of Jim Mars for a second.
You don't want to go
there. when you hear a report come across the mass media, in whatever form, doesn't matter, radio, television, whatever, internet, and you see something that smells of a false flag, something is there. And with your knowledge of, Kennedy and the FBI and Operation Northwoods and of course 9/11, how do you weed out what could be a false flag operation or what is just right dead in front of us? How does your mind work?
Well, a lot of that has to do with what you know to begin with, and I have made a study of everything back to, my book, Rule by Secrecy. I go all the way back to the Anunnaki and bring it forward through the secret societies, the Knights Templars, and then the Freemasons, and just on and on up to the so-called secret societies of today, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderbergs. And once you understand where these people came from and how they operate, they operate off the old Hegelian dialectic, okay, which is thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, which is a fancy way of saying problem, reaction, solution, okay?
Right.
But, and actually all George Hegel did was give us an outline of how human behavior and consideration works. In other words, if you want to go see a movie, but I don't want to go see that one, you want to see A, I want to see B. So then, the thesis, the problem is that I want to see movie A and you don't. The reaction is you want to see movie B, but I don't. So the solution is, if we're good, considerate friends, then we'd probably go see movie C, okay, the one that we both would agree to. And so that's the way it works. Well, that sounds fine, but what these people who are trying to control the world, the way they operate, they say, why wait around for the problem? We'll create the problem, and then we'll offer a draconian solution, and when everybody goes, whoa, we can't do that, then we'll offer a halfway solution, and we'll be halfway to our goal. And we'll just keep putting one step forward until we get what we want. And that's what they're doing. That's the way it works. The Murrah Federal Building bombing in Oklahoma City, immediately there was a call to register guns and to put down the militias and to go after homegrown terrorists. And boy, they were offering all this solutions, and everybody's going, wait, we got a constitution, and we got to have some freedoms. And they're going, well, okay, then we'll just do. And 9/11, same thing. Well, the problem is 9/11. The solution was to create Homeland Security and pass the Patriot Act and the Military Commissions Act, and create a national police force, and get everybody used and conditioned to being groped and hassled at the airport, so that was the solution. And then now calmer heads are going, well, maybe we don't need to do that, but they're still pressing for it. So
I've got about 10 or 20 questions in Twitter that have come in, and if you do have any questions for Jim Mars, that's hashtag F2BQ. That's Fade 2 Black Questions, F2BQ at JChurch Radio. That's what you want to do. This question has come in twice, and maybe you'll understand it. Does Jim feel the deaths of the 4 media people are linked to a darker agenda? If so, what is being concealed? Now, that came in from 2 different people. What are these 4 deaths that they're talking about?
Well, let's just say I'm keeping my eye on that. I personally like Michael Hastings. I think he was taken out.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
But now some of there's 4 or 5 that happened recently, and they're so recent that I can't even enumerate them by name one after another. But I am not paranoid, okay? I do not automatically see a conspiracy in everything. In fact, I try to go for the simplest explanation. I try to go for the logical, reasonable, and the more conservative, common sense explanation that these just happen to be a coincidental deaths. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to forget about it. I'm going to keep my eye on that. If more information comes up, and there's more, because there is a thread going on. There are, in every despotic regime in history, there comes a point where they start rounding up the dissidents, okay? They don't want people. And when you look at the number of microbiologists who have all died under unnatural circumstances over the past, 10 years or less, and then you look at the number of bankers, like 38 or 40 of them, that have been in high positions of finance that have all died just over the past several months, you can't help but start thinking, wait a minute, what's going on here? Are they trying to get rid of people who could tell us where some pandemic might have come from or what we might do to either prevent it or cure it? Are they trying to get rid of financial experts who might tell us when the next economic collapse is and who's behind it? So, I definitely can think down those lines, but I try not to let it just, overwhelm me with paranoia. Of course, always remember, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not after you.
Well, I remember when Michael Hastings died in that car crash, I live here in Hollywood. Now, I don't remember the exact day of the week, but I remember reading about it and thinking to myself, there's no way, because of where he crashed on Highland, I think it was on Highland, this is my memory working, but if he crashed on Highland on a Friday night in Hollywood doing 100 miles an hour, all that went through my brain in reading the newspaper reports was that it's impossible. All that traffic that is in Hollywood on any day of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, it doesn't matter. Hollywood is jam-packed full of everything. And right there at Hollywood and Highland, where he wrecked just south of Highland, that is the tourist capital of L.A., right there, that corner, and it is packed full of people, cars, restaurants, things, at
all hours of the day.
All hours. And there's no way to exceed 10 miles an hour there, let alone somebody speed up to 100 miles an hour and lose control of a car. There's so many police. It just wouldn't have happened. And it just smelled fishy. I remember reading that going, there's no way. There's no way to do that. There's too much traffic.
What bothers me more than anything is the fact that there didn't seem to be any inquisitive reporters out there who were trying to get to the bottom of it.
No,
I couldn't do it. I can't do it from Texas.
Right. Well,
surely there's a good reporter out in L.A. somewhere that would track that. Unless everybody's cowed, I can remember when my own mother once told me, said, maybe you shouldn't be writing about the Kennedy assassination. Said, don't you feel like that, you might be messing with the government, And I had to remind her, well, Mom, where would we be if the mother of Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, and Franklin told them, hey, don't mess with the British Empire. They're the mightiest empire in the world. Where would we be?
Somebody just asked me, right as you said that, have you ever met the Queen? Do you know the Queen personally? That's the question. That's the question right here.
Oh, you got to be kidding. Of course not. I did get to Buckingham Palace one time and stood out in the street with everybody else, but that's about the closest I've ever been to the Queen.
It's right here in all caps. Please ask Jim Mars if he knows the Queen personally. That's from Gigi.
No, I don't.
Right.
Probably a good thing, because if I did and tried to tell the truth like Princess Diana, I'd be killed in a car crash too.
She'd look at you and those eyes would go just reptilian. Right in front of you. Just send you a little signal. Go black. Let's see.
I will say people just, they realize the Queen of England has a lot of power and a lot of pomp and circumstance, but they just really don't realize how wealthy the royals of England really are. They pretty much own most of England, and most everyone who lives there, they very few people actually own their own property. They're all just renting from the crown.
The book that Hillary was carrying with Lawrence Rockefeller, remember when she was, photographed carrying, it was Paul Davies' book, Are We Alone?
Yeah.
That was the book. You got to love Fadernauts, Jim. They're so smart. They are staying on top of us, you and I. Let's see. Does Jim think POTUS is affiliated with the Muslim Brotherhood?
Well, it depends on how you define affiliated. Obviously, I think he has warm and fuzzy feelings towards them because he's caved into the Muslims right and left. In fact, if you look at it very dispassionately, and I try to be very objective, and I have nothing against a black man in the presidency. I have nothing against a good, smooth talking person, but I want to know, who do they represent? If you go back, you can go all the way back to his book, The Songs of My Father. And in there he says, if the going gets tough, I'll side with the Muslims.
Did he really say that? I've heard that. Did he really actually say?
He really did.
You really did. You read it yourself.
And he's made these quotes like, there's nothing as beautiful as the call of the mullah in the evening, blah, blah, blah. And there's just little telltale things. For example, at public expense, they have to fly the White House dog Bo on a separate airplane, okay? Now, why would they do that?
I know.
Well, Muslim custom says you cannot travel with your animals, okay? So, and then during Ramadan, okay, where the devout Muslims say you're not supposed to show your idolatry and your flaunt your riches and everything by wearing jewelry, he was photographed with no wedding ring, and no watch. And when asked about it, the White House said, "Oh well, they're in the shop for repair." Well, okay, maybe his watch needs repair, but how do you repair a wedding ring, So there's just telltale things there, and I think he's a closet Muslim.
Well, okay, this show is...
Hey, wait a minute.
Okay.
It's okay, okay?
It is okay.
Here's the thing. If he or anybody wants to get up and say, hey, I'm a homosexual Muslim socialist, and I want to run for president, okay? That's okay. This is a free country. That's what's great about this country, is that he could do that.
Yes.
But that's being truthful, okay?
Right.
Now, but we didn't get that.
Right.
We get this thing that, he's a happy married man, he's a Christian, and blah, 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 and and so I think there's been a lot of deceit involved here.
Do you think he's got that prayer mat in the White House?
I have no way of knowing.
I went there.
But,
I went there, Jim. I went there. I went right there. Do you think he's got a prayer mat in the White House?
I don't know. Maybe he's not that devout. I don't know.
Oh man!
Of course, this is nothing new. This is what that was a big issue back at the time that John Kennedy ran for president, was the fact that he was a Catholic.
Right.
And I know down here in Texas, from the Baptist pulpits, we were told, don't vote for him or the Vatican will run the country.
Yeah, I kind of remember. Well, I was too young to remember it, but I certainly heard
it. Well, then Kennedy then met with a bunch of Christian preachers, Protestant preachers, down in Houston, I think it was, and he assured them that although he was a good, devout Catholic, that he would not allow that to play any part in his decisions as president of the United States, and it mollified a bunch of them, and that was enough to get him over that hurdle. Okay. Of course, it was still a very, very close election between him and Richard Nixon in 1960. But that kind of fell away as a major critique of him. Okay, so, but see, we didn't even get to have that discussion with Obama.
I remember when I was a kid. Let's go back 45 years ago. Okay, late 60s. I remember some friends of mine, parents, and so forth. I heard it more than once. Conversations at the dinner table. We're in watching TV and they're in there playing pinochle, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember, they killed Kennedy because he was a Catholic. And I used to hear this and I was like, what does that mean? It was way beyond my comprehension. I was really young, but I had heard that a few times.
The point is, real, imagined, or wrong, at that point there were a lot of people who were concerned that the person's religion, in that case Kennedy and Catholicism,
right,
would somehow impact on his ability to govern objectively, okay? And my point is that was at a more educated, thoughtful, sophisticated time. Today, we never had any, there are a few people who try to raise their hand and question about Obama's religion, and they're quickly shouted down by the political correctness crowd, about, well, I ain't got anything to do with anything. Well, excuse me, it just might. So, and I mean, I'm not saying one way or another. I'm just saying it ought to be open to discussion and investigation.
Yep. Man, I love having you on the show, man. It's always the best time.
With me, I just speak the truth. But don't believe me. Don't believe me.
No.
Go check it out for yourself.
No gospel going on here. There's no gospel of Mars.
And like I said earlier, it's Obama who practically single-handedly, and him through the CIA and in his executive orders, has virtually created ISIS. Okay, that's why I try to tell everybody we got the best enemies money can buy.
I want to discuss ISIS in just a second, but today is President's Day, and I had tweeted out at the top of the show. I said, okay, mine was two, but when you think of the greatest president of the United States ever, who's the first, that pops into mind? And that's how I started out the show on Twitter. So I'm going to throw that question out to you. When you think of the greatest president ever, there's, one's going to pop in your head first. Bam. Who is that? Oh, you got to think about it.
Yeah, I got to think about it because there's pros and cons to all of them. Millard J. Fillmore comes to mind. Okay, because he was a strict constitutionalist. But I'd have to say for modern presidents, I still like Harry Truman.
Truman? Okay.
Yeah, because when Truman left office, I think he got on a train along with everybody else and went back to Missouri.
Right.
He wasn't a millionaire. And he didn't fly in Air Force One. He didn't take trips to Hawaii. And, he didn't play golf all the time like Eisenhower and Obama and Clinton. And, he took over the presidency there in the middle of World War II. Well, not in the middle. It was almost over. But still, he had a world war on his hands. And he had to make the decision, drop the bomb on Japan, and that's still controversial, and you can argue it both ways.
Right.
But he had to make some tough decisions. And in fact, I think the greatest mistake he ever made was passing the National Security Act of 1947, which was rushed through. In fact, his mother was dying, and he was trying to get back to Missouri, and they held his plane because they wanted to rush that National Security Act of 47 end of September to him for signature so they could rush it into law. And that happened just a few months after Roswell. And I think a lot of that had to do with covering up the UFO secrets, okay? But what it also did was create the National Security Council, which has been the bane of our existence ever since. And it created the CIA. Okay, the modern CIA, which has also done nothing but cause us problems all the way down the line. In fact, Truman himself later wrote that he was sorry, that he said he regretted that the CIA had gotten so far out of control of what it was supposed to be, which was simply a quiet intelligence gathering arm of the presidency. And of course, now thanks to the Bay of Pigs and got all the way up to Bosnia and all the way up to today, they're around the world just doing all kinds of stuff.
Somebody just tweeted, Jimmy, no, it's Washington's birthday. Okay, yeah, I had read something about President's Day right before the show. I spaced on Washington's birthday. Hey, okay, it's live radio. Okay.
I wondered about that.
Yeah,
but
we all know what February 16th is. So,
right.
But so you're going Fillmore. This was my answer.
No, I go Harry Truman.
Oh, Harry Truman. Okay.
Because he didn't, good, bad, or indifferent. That doesn't mean that I agree with everything he ever did, but he was not a grafter, and he was not corrupt, and he didn't enrich himself through his service as the President of the United States.
Well,
and I don't think you can say that about anybody since him.
Well, I went with a tie. This is what I did. I went with a tie. I went with JFK for a multitude of reasons, and almost none of them political, by the way.
Right.
So I went with JFK, and I went with Ronald Reagan. And
all right. Well, let me comment on that. First off, the reason I did not say JFK because I have come to a grudging admiration for JFK, and I think in fact at the bottom line of what got him assassinated was the fact that he truly thought he was president, and he truly was making some decisions, right or wrong, that he truly believed was in the best interest of the public of the United States
and the world and the world
and history. But the problem was he only served 1,000 days, and he really didn't. And there was so much he didn't get done. His was a presidency of promise. That's why I didn't list him. And then as far as Reagan goes, let's stop and think about it a minute. Less than 2 months after Reagan took office, he was shot, and then we had the Iran-Contra scandal where they were trying to stir up a war in Nicaragua. And if you go back and look at all that, and Colonel North, who testifies to Congress and says, yes, I did lie to the president and to the Congress and to the American people, but I did it all with the approval of the president, okay? Well, now it's okay. But nobody ever bothered to ask, well, who was the president? Because at that time, Reagan had been shot, and it was George Herbert Walker Bush that was signing all the documents for the Iran-Contra scandal.
The reason
so we had Bush a lot earlier, and then Reagan, of course, poor guy got Alzheimer's, and he couldn't remember it.
Well, for me, Reagan sitting down with Gorbachev in Iceland, looking at him eyeball to eyeball, going, "You're going to sign this treaty because we have this thing called Star Wars, which makes your missiles obsolete." And he turned, Gorbachev turns to his people, "What is these Star Wars? Is this real?" And he BS'd Gorbachev, looked at him eyeball to eyeball, and they broke off. Gorbachev goes and talks to his people, and they're like, "Yeah, man, we think he's telling the truth. You better go sign that." And
well, I
gotta give him props for that, man. I just do.
That's true. He did get in Gorbachev's face, but the thing that actually ended all that, and about that time, was the remote viewing. Okay,
right.
Our remote viewing versus the Russians' extra sensors, which is what they call their remote viewers.
Right.
And the whole thing, Jimmy, was that the Cold War was built on secrecy all the way around. We weren't dead certain what the Russians' ultimate goals were.
Oh man, I just lost Jim. All right, let's just take a quick break. I'll get Jim right back on the line. Stay with us. This is Fade to Black. Bespoke, ready for the masses. We're talking to Jim Mars live from Texas, Tejas. I'll be back right after this. Stay with us.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, talking to Jim Mars live from Texas. Needed to take a quick break anyway. We did that right at the top of the hour. It just goes to show the NSA was telling us that we needed to take a break. What do you think about that, Jim?
I think so.
There was one thing, and I thought you were leaning there. We were just talking about JFK, and I thought you were going there. And so let me help you in that you said that he thought that he was president, and he probably found out that he really wasn't. And
I think he finally got it through his head that that's not true.
Right. And when he made that famous speech about secret societies and secret handshakes, I think he found out some things that when he probably knew going into office too, as well as that's how the world was run. But when he made that public speech and said that, no president has ever spoken like that, and he stepped.
And see, that's why I think Truman was certainly the last, except maybe Eisenhower. Truman and Eisenhower, maybe Eisenhower, certainly Truman, were the last of the presidents who truly believed that they had the power of the presidency, okay? Now, Kennedy, going into it, he thought he had the power of the presidency, but he also was enough of an intellectual and a historian to know that there was a lot of forces going on that he had to deal with. But I think that even Kennedy, because let's remember that Kennedy, was a war hero. He was PT 109. He fought the Japs in the South Pacific. And so, I think he fell victim to the same thing as all the rest of us. We won the war. We were God's gift to democracy and freedom. And we were the shining beacon of the Western world. And I think he truly bought into the idea that, there's the president and the Congress and the Supreme Court and the checks and balances of the Constitution. And I think he was a World War II warrior type, and he truly believed in all that stuff. And although he knew that there were forces moving around and could possibly even conspiring against him, one of his favorite movies that he commented on was 7 Days in May, which is, you need to see that movie, by the way, which is about a military takeover, a coup in the United States, and when you watch that movie, you'll see exactly how they probably operated against Kennedy. And so he understood that, but I think deep down within his soul, even John F. Kennedy did not believe that, that there were groups in this country that would act like a banana republic, that they would just kill the chief and go on.
Well, pretend you and I are not on the air right now, okay? And we're sitting somewhere like we were this past week, and we're just hanging out. And I hit you with this question. What do you think happens? The president, gets sworn into office. He walks into the Oval Office for the first time. He sits down at the desk, and then the phone rings, and he picks it up. This is the prez, and then somebody on the other end says what to him?
Well, for one thing, I don't think it'd be on a telephone, but I think he goes and sits down at the Oval Office, and somebody who he knows quite well and respects and understands, has connections deep into the highest echelons, of everything, comes in with him and maybe lays that book of secrets in front of him or whatever and says, okay, here's your briefing. And for the next day or two, they brief him on what's really going on and what he can and what he cannot do. Okay? And, I think they get the Riot Act read to them real quick. This is why Jimmy Carter, by the way, talking about UFOs, he said he had a UFO experience. He knew there was something there. He knew it was real. And on his campaign pledge, he said, if I get to be president, I will tell you the truth, and I'll find out what is the truth and tell it to you about the UFOs. And yet, once he got in office, not a word.
Not a word. Why, it seems like, Ford was on a mission. I think Reagan wanted to do the same thing. I don't know about Nixon, but I've heard the stories about Nixon and Jackie Gleason in Florida, and I thought those are pretty interesting. But it seems, and we know about Clinton.
But Steve, they know these things. There was the Marilyn Monroe was going to blow the whistle on Kennedy, and she was upset because she felt like she'd been jilted by the Kennedy boys, and she was threatening to hold a news conference, and she was going to tell Pillow Talk secrets, okay? And among the first secret that she mentioned was that Kennedy told her how he went to a secret air base. Can you spell Area 51?
Right.
And viewed things from space, okay, whatever that means. And that was just a month or so before she turned up dead. So this is a secret that they will kill to keep.
You want to take some phone calls?
Sure.
When was the last time?
I'm not scared.
When was the last time you took phone calls?
Oh, I take phone calls pretty much all the time, just not during dinner.
No, like me. Yeah, I'll let everybody know. Jim said, "Hey, Jimmy, I'm eating dinner. Call back." Click. All right, let's open up the phone lines. 323-825-5045. 323-825-5045. You can also Skype in Fade to Black 14. I'll ask everybody. Make your question quick and brief, and we'll get everybody in. And if you would like to speak with the one and only Jim Mars, you got a Lifetime Achievement Award, man. Hey, what? I didn't see it. I was in the back of the room. Was it a plaque? Was it a trophy? Was it like a bowling trophy? What did you get?
No little statue or anything. It was just a plaque. Nice.
Man, is it on your mantle?
Well, not yet. I'm trying to figure out where I'm going to put it. Can't decide if I want to put it next to my wanted poster or my Indian award I got, Eagle Feather. I don't know. I can't figure out where I want to put it yet.
Very cool. Okay, I'm going to answer all of these in order. Let's go to the first call. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Say hi to Jim Mars.
Oh.
You're live.
Hello?
You're live.
I'm live?
You're live.
I can hear you.
Okay.
Hey, Jimmy.
Howdy.
How you doing?
Probable.
Okay, let's make it quick.
Okay, I've got one quick question. My name is Mike Reese. I live in western North Carolina. And what I was wanting to ask is how much and how fast and how many people do you think that are in the general public are becoming aware of what's going on in the truth, about all these subjects that we're all interested in?
So in other words, you're asking where I think is the tipping point, right?
Yes, his call just dropped, so I think that's where he was going.
I think so too. Excuse me. That's a good question, and frankly, I'm at some point, Jimmy, during that Conscious Life Expo, somebody asked me, do you see the world as the half-empty glass or the half-full glass? And I got to tell you, I kind of see the world as a half-full glass. I think there's a lot of good people out there. Most people are good people. You give them half a chance and the truth, they'll make good decisions, okay? The problem we have so many problems in this country today is because there's too many well-intentioned people who are acting on bad information, erroneous information, incomplete information, twisted information. And we're back to where we were at the first of the program about liars, and truth. But to answer the guy's question, I think we are rapidly approaching that tipping point. I would say, the tipping point obviously would be at the 50-50 mark. If you tip over the 50-50 mark, it's going to obviously tip. But it might not even take 50% of the population. It might only take as much as 20 or 25% of the population. And I think we are getting close to that number right now. I mean, we got 12,000 people out in L.A. coming to this Conscious Life Expo expressing interest in UFOs, past life regressions, blah, blah, New Age type stuff, crystals and healthy food, and that just represents people who actually got out of their home and paid money, and there's so many other people who couldn't take the time or the trouble or didn't have the money. And so I think when you add it all up, I think and across the country, other pockets, even here in backward Texas, in Texas, we're usually 5 years behind the rest of the country. If the fad is something in the country, then it'll finally get to Texas about 5 years later. But even here, especially down around Austin and parts of Houston, parts of Dallas, there's some real awake thinking people. So I think nationwide we may be approaching that 20 percentile.
Well, I saw and I heard this over and over again at Conscious Life. One of the things, it wasn't about all the questions that were coming in. It wasn't about are we alone, or I've got a story to tell, or this happened to a friend. I heard it over and over again at your presentations as well. It was all about disclosure. That's all anybody wanted to know. When do you think it's going to happen? When do you think it's going to happen?
Yeah.
And I was there when that lady stood up and said, is the glass half full? Yeah, I was right there, and that seemed to be even at that lecture too as well, which was Ancient Aliens. That everybody wanted to know about disclosure.
Well, that's another thing. Let me show you how things have turned around. Way back, let's say in the let's go back to that. We'll go back to the 80s, just the 80s, late 80s, when my book Crossfire came out, and I was on a lot of the talk shows, and I was, and I'd tell them there was a conspiracy to kill Kennedy, and other things were going on, and Watergate was just a presidential assassination. It's just that they didn't physically kill him; they just politically killed him, et cetera, et cetera. I would get there would be calls. All the calls that came in would be going, this guy's an idiot. This guy doesn't even know what he's talking about. Throw him off the air. Don't let somebody like that on the air. And I went through that for 20 years, I guess. But since, I'd say maybe since 9/11 or mid-2000s up till today, I don't get any of those calls anymore. Okay? Now, that doesn't mean I think that everybody out there is suddenly on board with the Kennedy assassination and UFOs and ancient aliens, but the people who are in total denial about those things, they certainly have gotten quiet. Okay? And like you said, those people at here's all these people that were at that expo, there wasn't any question.
Did I lose you, Jim? Are you there? I think Jim just dropped.
I'm here.
Okay. Hi, Dino. Stay with me. Let me see if I can bring Jim back. Hold on. Oh, man.
Service has not been established for the number you are calling.
All right. Let's see here. He's coming back. You know what? I'm going to take I don't know how to. Let me see here. Let's see. Boom. Done. No. I need to bring him back online. Dino, I'll be back right after this. Stay with us, all right?
Right on.
You got it. I got to bring Jim back. I don't know. I think we're getting interfered with. You got to love it, man. I'm telling you, as soon as you hit that chord, this is what happens. I'll be back right after this.
JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? My name's Brian Taylor, Ninja Badass Extraordinaire, and this is JimmyChurchRadio.com.
JJCR in your face.
JimmyChurchRadio.com.
This is Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Once again, NSA interfering with me and my friend, Jim Mars. You know what's funny, Jim? It just goes click.
Yeah, well, it's not me. I don't touch anything. It's not my phone. You know?
All right, let's just go to the next.
I don't know. I guess maybe they have to change reels. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. They're not going to stop us, my brother. Let's go to the next caller. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Say hi to Jim Mars.
Hey, Jim Mars.
Howdy.
And hi, Jim Church. How are you?
And who is calling?
This is Sal from OAN, New York.
Hi, Sal. How are you tonight?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Doing good. Say hi to Jim, and what do you got for us?
Hey, Jim, the one question I wanted to ask you're on the 9/11 thing, and I've heard from time to time that there were military exercises on that day. And, I haven't investigated it a lot, and I just wonder if you know anything about that kind of thing.
Thank you, Sal.
Military exercises, certainly. There's a whole bunch of them going on. There was Tripod in New York, and then there was Valiant Guardian, Valiant Shield. There's all kinds of stuff going on. Oh, excuse me. I swallowed some water and went down the wrong way. I interviewed this Master Sergeant who was at North American Command, and he said that they were even running a scenario that morning of hijacked airliners crashing into the World Trade Center. And when they threw the network news up on the screen and they saw the planes hitting the World Trade Center, their jaws hit the ground. It's like, how could this happen? This is the very thing we're programming. And I know the National Reconnaissance Office was scheduling an exercise for that morning that had a plane hitting the Pentagon. I mean, come on, folks. And, of course, they denied this for more than a year. Like, oh, that didn't happen. Oh, that's a conspiracy theory. And now it's very well documented. But again, when there's stuff like that, when it just dribbles out, then a lot of people don't get the word, okay? And it certainly was never played up on the mainstream mass media. But yes, in fact, not only 9/11, but the subway bombing in London, the bombing in Madrid, Spain, and even the Boston marathon bombing, all of those took place during exercises. And apparently that seems to be the modus operandi of some of these things, which is they get a military exercise going and then slip in a real attack. And I personally think that there are people running around right now today who in one way or another participated in the attack of 9/11, but at the time and even today aren't sure that their actions had played any part in it, because it was all compartmentalized and operating under military secrecy and military war games.
Yeah, how can it be? We have military exercises going on, right? And we can't scramble jets. Wouldn't they have already been in the air? I've just felt.
Well,
I feel a little dirty about that. I feel a little unclean when I get that explanation.
Exactly, and when you go back and look at the response, for example, when they contacted NORAD, want to know, have you got interceptors in the air? The first question was, well, is this real world or is this the exercise? According to the information I got, they, in connection with these military exercises, they had what they call inputs, which are false readings of captured airliners that they had on their radar.
Right.
Maybe two dozen of them. They didn't know what was real and what was not. Now the question is, we know that Mohammed Atta, who they claim is the head of the hijackers, that the day before they intercepted a message, the NSA intercepted a message from him, and he said the match it begins tomorrow. So in other words, the games begin tomorrow. He knew. How did they know to coordinate their attack with these military operations that were secret? Okay, public didn't know. We didn't know. I heard rumors of that very day, but it took me more than a year to document some of these military exercises. How did these hijackers know? Because, folks, it was an inside job.
Hi, Dino. Say hi to Jim Mars.
Good evening, Jimmy. Jimmy and Jim. Exactly what I'm talking about tonight. I mean, I came to conspiracies kind of hard, even though I have been kind of political most of my life. Other than the JFK, it was my interest in extraterrestrials, different species visiting us, and hidden technology that now I've come back around. That, as you're saying, Jim, we appreciate you speaking out all these years. You're not a nut, and it's the whole thing that the enemy is us. It's like our government and secret factions of the 1% seem to be the ones that are causing all these things. And as you well know, we read, first it was the Nazis we were after, now we're after the terrorists, and I guess the next one will be, the extraterrestrials are invading, give us your tax money for more secret stuff, you know?
Absolutely, that's right. It's like, oh my goodness, there really are aliens, and now they're here and they want to eat you, so give us the last of your liberties and we'll protect you. And the thing that bothers me is there's going to be so many people that are going to fall for it.
Including me, Jim. All right, what's the question?
What I wanted to ask you as a follow-up to that was, Jimmy, you read a lot of the news tonight, which I was following, and so much of it from this weekend, from Podesta and his comments on to just all the stuff that's coming out now. I know a lot of people disagree with me, but I think that the push, Jim, for disclosure that even's going on right now, through the Stephen Bassett and other people and Dr. Greer, that might have started shaking more things loose, even if it doesn't come through that channel. Don't you agree that the more we talk about this and put petitions and all that it shakes more people loose who are willing to come forward and talk?
Thank you for the question,
I totally
Dino.
agree with you. I think that the more pressure applied, the more pressure there is for the so-called leaders and top politicians to actually get off their duff and start trying to tell us something. But I'll also say this. I don't think disclosure is going to be up to us, okay? I can't conceive of any politician that's going to want to, at this point in time, stand up and say, okay, folks, there really are UFOs and there really are aliens and we've been in touch and blah, blah, blah. I just don't see that happening. And I don't see this. I mean, we've already had 2 national meetings where we had hundreds of military people and people with very good credentials get up and say, they're real, I know, I was here, I participated in this and that and the other thing. Where did that go? Nowhere, really. The disclosure, when it happens, it's up to them, okay? Think about it. All they got to do is come and hang out over some major city long enough for the news teams to get out and start shooting video, okay? And they'll be on the 10 o'clock news, and at that point, the game's up. Everybody will know.
Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Say hi to Jim Mars. Who's calling?
This is Easy Rider from Carbondale, Illinois.
Hi, Easy.
How you doing, Jim Mars?
Howdy.
I appreciate your work and Jimmy Church's work. I don't know where we get our news and we couldn't get it from you guys.
What have you got for? Thank you for that. What do you got for Jim?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you on 9/11. Something that always bothered me when I first seen those videos is how those buildings fell directly in their own footprint, and I realized, it's hard to know what to believe, but airplanes look like they hit the buildings. I was just wondering what your theory was, why they fell so perfectly right where they stood. And I'll take my answer off there. Thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you, Easy. Bye. Thank you.
So the question is, how did the World Trade Center buildings come down so neatly, so perfectly, and drop right into their own footprint?
Yeah, pretty much that was the question. Yeah. Too perfect.
Well, the answer to that is that, and this is just my personal belief, although some of this has been proven up. They have found traces of thermite, which can melt steel, okay? And they found traces. In fact, we've got film of molted steel pouring out the tops of those buildings. So you had thermite involved, you had explosives involved, and I personally think that they used a small tactical nuclear weapon, okay? I remember as a kid, Jimmy, this may have been before your time, but I know back in the 50s, there were newsreels showing them firing atomic cannon shells, okay?
Yep.
They had those long tom cannons, and they'd fire a nuclear shell about 10 miles, and they'd go boom and create a nuclear explosion. Now, that was back in the 50s, so there's an artillery shell, about maybe 4 foot long or so, not very big. And now, as I understand it, they have now got nuclear devices that may be the size of a basketball or even smaller, maybe closer to an outsized baseball, softball. Now, if you put one of those things in the basement of the World Trade Center, where one of the witnesses was and said that the explosion occurred in the basement, and you make a shaped charge and you fire that thing upward, then a small nuclear thing could take out those 47 steel beams that were the center post of the World Trade Centers. And with all those gone, then you've got some thermite explosives planted at certain strategic places. That would explain the whole thing coming down. And what we saw was this pyroclastic cloud that not only went upwards but outward and blew steam beams outward. So there was obviously something going on more than just a building collapsing. Okay, I've seen buildings collapse. I've seen buildings brought down by demolition. And believe me, earthquakes, buildings fall over and they crumble and they fall this way and that way. They do not drop into their own footprints unless there's a very carefully calculated internal demolition taking place. And of course, that's what happened. And it's very obvious on the third building that went down, which a lot of people are like, what third building? It's the Solomon Brothers building, or better known as World Trade Center 7. Okay, and that afternoon, about 5:30, it just, 47-story building, steel and glass, hadn't been hit by any airplanes, and it dropped into its own footprint, neatly between the Verizon building and the U.S. Post Office, okay, without seriously damaging either one of those two buildings. Now, come on, folks. And even Larry Silverstein, who owned that property, was on PBS saying, well, I told them to pull it, so they pulled it, and we watched the building go down, which, is saying that we demolished the building. So if that one went down, then you can figure the other two went down also through controlled demolition.
Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Say hi to Jim Mars. Who's calling?
Hey, Mr. Mars. Hey, Jimmy. It's Stevie from Western Kentucky. How you doing, brother?
How are you, Stevie?
Man, I'm fine. Thank you for asking. Hey, Mr. Mars, I had a quick question. This touches a little bit on what Dino asked about the disclosure issue. Do you think, first of all, that if it was to real disclosure was to come out publicly, would it be a situation of one of our enemies, a whistleblower like Snowden, or do you think it would be possibly something that the U.S. would concede to allow to be done with the concession of they would be at the forefront of technologies and whatever pluses they can get from working with the more advanced, technologically advanced race?
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, like I said before, actually that's already happened. You've got hundreds of whistleblowers that have come forward and said they know this and that about the ET situation. We've had even official meetings like the one that Dr. Greer headed up here a few months back, and then back in 2001. And we've got all these conventions where you got all these people coming, you go on the internet and there's all kinds of UFO pictures, So actually it's kind of out there for those that want to look at it. But I think what you're saying is an official announcement, okay? And like I said earlier, I don't think that's going to happen. I think disclosure is going to come when they reveal themselves, okay? And when that'll be, I don't really know, although I suspect because of the growing awareness of the population and the growing acceptance, that's the key thing. Like I said, back in the 50s, national polls showed nobody believed there's life outside the Earth, and today it's quite the opposite. The vast majority of people say, yeah, I think there could be something out there. So I think we've been conditioned, and we are now ready, and I think that we may have some sort of disclosure, if you want to call it that, within the next few years.
Anything else, Stevie?
Thank you. I had one real quick. Yeah, I had one real fast one. It's a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek kind of joke type of question, but I was wondering if, say, things were able to be worked out between the U.S. and whatever powers are out there, if they were to actually have some main bases and they had a new Texas, would you consider running for governor?
Thank you, Stevie. Would you run for office, Jim? You know you'd win.
Yeah, but I can barely be responsible for myself. I don't want to be responsible for somebody else. In fact, you know what? To me, that's a rule of thumb for politics, okay? If the guy is spending millions of dollars to get $100,000 office, you better watch him. You don't want him in there, okay? It's the guy who doesn't really want to be in there that you want, because he's liable to just be honest and do what's good for the people. And that's another thing. I'll tell you what we need to do, especially for Congress and, yes, even the Supreme Court, is we need to institute term limits, okay? You put a guy in Congress for 4 years, say, and then he's got to go home. Instead of building a nest egg and getting rich and then prostituting himself to the special interest and to the giant corporations. He goes up there and he can put in his time for 4 years, and then we get somebody new in there. And that doesn't guarantee that we're going to have an incorrupt Congress, but at least they won't be there too long.
Well, every time you're on with us, it always happens. Twitter lights up. I get emails. Jim Mars for president. Why? I mean, and
hey, please don't vote for me for president, because the worst thing that can happen is I'd win, and then the same thing that happened to me that happened to Reagan and John Kennedy, I'd get shot right away.
Why do people look at you like that? Is it because you speak sense, or is it because of maybe it's a trust thing that people think that they would actually trust you if you were elected? What do you think it is?
Well, I hope it would be trust, because, you know, I've published about 10 books now, plus been on radio for years and years and years, and I haven't deviated from my spiel. You know, back in the 70s, I wrote a article on the front page of the newspaper that said if the new Congressional Committee to Investigate Assassinations does their homework, they'll find there was a coup d'etat in the United States in 1963. That was back in 1975 or whenever. So, you know, I don't think it's a trust thing, and because anyone who's followed my work, they ought to know that everything I've ever said is the truth, or at least I believe it's the truth. Now, I may have misspoken a few things, but if I did, it was not consciously. It was because I was given bad information. And everybody can make a mistake, right, Jimmy?
That's why this is Bespoke Radio for the Masses. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. We are speaking with Jim Mars, live from Texas. Welcome back to the program, Jim. Not only that, but you did just win this award. I know I've said it like 3 or 4 times tonight, but I was there, and it was a very, very, very cool evening, and everybody was so excited. And you know what? The one thing about you winning that award, Jim, there was nobody in the back of the room leaning against the wall saying, you know, I should have won that. You know, no. It didn't go there that night. You know,
I hadn't even thought about that. Well, and I will tell you this, I was quite honored and surprised, because we got there to that room a little bit early, and there was just, you know, I don't know, 10 or 12 people standing around. I figured, yeah, okay, here's the crowd. But by the time it got cranking, that place looked like it was wall to wall.
Yeah, see, you were already in there. I came in with Mike Barra and Rita, and so we had to walk past the line that was outside, right? And we walk straight up. We go into the door, and then it's just you, me, Nori, Mike Barra, Tom was there. That was about it, you know, the big Q. We said we wouldn't say his name. But and that was really it. But I knew what was coming in from outside, man. I was like, how's it gonna pack into this room? And the room was big, but it wasn't that big.
It wasn't that big. Well, see, that's what got me, because I didn't think there was hardly gonna be anybody there, but they just kept coming in.
It was a great night.
Now, it was quite gratifying.
Okay, let's. I've got calls stacked up. Let's grab a couple more really quick. Turn down your radio.
Turn down your radio.
Turn it down.
Hello.
Okay. Hi. You're live.
You're live.
You need to turn that down.
Hi, this is Allison.
Hi, Allison. Say hi to Jim.
Hi,
Allison. Hi to Jim.
Hi, Jim. How are you?
Howdy. I'm tolerable. Howdy. I'm tolerable. Hello. Hello.
Hi. I have one question, and I'll take it off the air. I was just wondering if you thought that our current government, that we all think is our government, the people that we elect is actually the government that is government, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Now, what you're asking is our government truly in charge?
Is it what we elected?
No. Yeah. And the answer is no. If you've been listening to the whole program, we talked about how that Bill Clinton was unable to get to UFO issues. Kennedy couldn't get to UFO issues. On and on. It's no. There's somebody else in charge. In fact, that's a big thing of mine because, you can write your congressman, you can go vote, but as long as we're just playing that game, nothing's going to change. We got to find out who's truly calling the shots. And I'll tell you something, it falls down. I think we're getting closer because now they talk about the banksters. Okay, that's a new term. That's a cross between a gangster and a banker, and you call them banksters. And that's since 2008 we find out that they're pretty much in charge because they're too big to fail, and that means they're also too big to take orders from anybody. And in fact, that kind of leads us to where we really are today, which is ruled by the corporations, by a handful of multinational corporations. And if you'll check the dictionary, you'll find that the classic definition of the blending of state and corporate power traditionally has been called fascism, okay? And in fact, the term fascism actually was coined by Benito Mussolini, the dictator of Italy during World War II. And Mussolini, because the term fascist comes from his black-shirted fascistas, okay, that he put in charge. They were kind of like the SS of Italy. And but even Mussolini himself said that fascism is really not quite the right term. The correct term is corporatism. There you go, ruled by the corporations. And that's what we have today. And so, when we play politics, government politics, and we worry about the president and presidential orders and Congress and Supreme Court, we're just playing their game because they answer to the corporate power. And if we're going to return any power to the people, we got to figure out how to gain power over the corporations. And you know what? I think we can. And here's why. If this was like, if we had a dictator, like some socialist, like Joe Stalin or Adolf Hitler, who was a national socialist, okay, and they're the supreme dictator, then that's hard to get anything changed because they're only going to do what they want to do and the public be damned. But under corporatism, the corporate leaders, they look to that bottom line. And as a result, if we could get them to come out with an electric car that's affordable and workable, and everybody bought the electric car, well, then that's what they would start producing, okay? And pretty soon we'd have electric cars running around, and we wouldn't be polluting like we are with the fossil fuel machines, all right? Same thing with aspartame. Aspartame's killing people, all right? And it's in so much stuff. It's in all the diet drinks. It's on all this diet stuff. And it was pushed through by Donald Rumsfeld, of all people, okay?
Right.
And if you study it, you know that, you learn that. Okay, so if enough people will quit buying products with aspartame in it, the corporations would quit producing it, okay? They'd go to something else. And I'm seeing this happening all the time because I know I live out in the country here, and we do a lot of swapping and trading around. Plus, I belong to a local organic co-op, and so we get all this organic food. And it used to be we'd go look to the supermarkets, or go to Walmart and try to find some organic food, and you had to really hunt and look, And today, there's more and more and more whole shelves devoted to organic food. Why? Because people are starting to buy that. And the more people buy it, the more they'll produce and give it to us. So we can change the corporate attitudes.
What about, I got two questions before I let you go that I really want to get in. And you're speaking right now to one of those questions, which is volume causes change. That's what causes change. What about, why don't we organize a million UFO march on D.C.? Certainly we could do that. I mean, just get everybody that wants disclosure. Let's go.
Well, wait, why Washington? Why don't we march on Area 51?
We get shot at.
Say, let me in.
They got those signs out there. Death by gun. But
right.
But what
we'll bring those militia snipers that went out to the ranch there, and set up on the government snipers, and nothing happened.
They already took out Bill Cooper. I don't know. So, but what about, why not? Do you think that would be enough to tip that balance in Washington?
Jimmy, in all truthfulness, I'm not sure, and privately, I don't really think so, because that UFO secret, that is something that goes right to the top of, and not politics, not government, but the people who are truly trying to run the world, and in collusion with off-world people, okay? And so we can march million people to Washington and demand some action. Politicians would all mouth around and say this. They'd form a committee, and they'd, 5 years later they'd say, well, we can't deny some things, but we'd have a rehash of the Project Blue Book. They'd stall around. It's the open contact and disclosure is only going to happen when they disclose themselves to us. Okay?
What about a 1 million man march on Langley?
There you go. No, I think we need to get about 2 million people march on Washington, go office to office, and say you've been downsized. Go home and get a real job.
Oh man!
Because I mean the waste that goes on. We've talked off and on through this whole program about how we've created ISIS. We've created all our enemies. If you'll read my books, especially Rule by Secrecy, Rise of the Fourth Reich, you'll find out that we meaning the bankers, leaders of the West, Wall Street, the City of London, which is separate from the city, from London to the city, and Wall Street, created communism in Russia, funded it, set them up, got them going. Then, when it started getting out of hand, they funded the Nazis in Germany. And when that got out of hand, they had to go fight them. And then after the war, they didn't defeat the Nazis. They just defeated the German military.
Right.
And they brought Nazis over here under Paperclip and other programs.
Right.
And they rolled them into our military-industrial complex, and we are now the Fourth Reich. Okay, this is who we have to understand. And we have to stop playing the games with,
Last question, and then we'll let you go. I know it's late out there in Texas, but ISIS, it seems to be. Let's just talk in basics here, but let's just say Syria and Iraq for now. Just let's leave Libya out and whatever, Paris and what have you, but seem to be somewhere between 10,000 and 20,000 strong. There's high numbers at 30,000. Why can't we get a hold of this? And why do it seems like it would be a 1 week mop up operation?
3 days.
Yeah, 3 days. Why haven't
3
we
days
done it?
and we'd be rid of all of them. Okay?
Yeah.
Well, the reason for that is because somewhere somebody doesn't want it that way. They want it the way it is so that they can keep shredding the Constitution, gaining more and more centralized power over it, because they've got us, afraid and scared and running. Okay, and we'll take care of it. Okay, just give us more tax money, And yet, if you look, our infrastructure in this country's falling apart. We have school kids that aren't being educated because the education system is just, crumbling. We got whole cities that are falling into ruin. We got people going hungry. We got people with no jobs. Now let's stop and think about it just a minute here, Jimmy. Here is not only proof of conspiracy, but proof of the greatest conspiracy taking place today. The United States of America, North America, is still a rich country in resources. We have water, we have oil, we've got gas, we got minerals, we got farmland, we got all the resources that any human could want. And we have a reasonably educated and willing workforce. Most people want to have honest work and to earn an honest living. So I ask you, why is it that we're in such economic straits as we are today, with people going hungry, people on relief, people on food stamps, people out of jobs, infrastructure's crumbling? Why? Okay, because I guarantee you the answer is quite simple. It's simply because somewhere somebody wants it that way. If nobody wanted it that way, it wouldn't be that way, right?
Jim Mars for president. I'll be your campaign manager.
Okay, but it's going to be a dangerous thing because I'm just going to tell it like it is. The thing is, well, think about that, Jimmy. You know how you can tell if a politician is lying to you?
Go ahead.
His mouth's moving. His mouth's moving. Okay, and I say that not as a judgment because the sad fact is nobody can get elected if they tell the truth. Okay, you just can't. You got to tell everybody what they want to hear if you're going to get elected.
You're going to be
can't tell them.
I don't get it how I think most politicians, and not everyone, but I think most get into politics with the best of intentions. And it doesn't. I mean, at the city level, they
right.
get in.
No, I tend to agree. In fact, I've known so many of them. Okay, and you're right. At the local level, people jump in and want to join the city council or the school board or the county commissioners, and then they want to run for state office, and then want to run for governor, and of course, then they get stars in their eyes, and they want to go to Congress, and then want to be a senator, and then maybe get to be president. The problem is that if you get in any one of those positions, but predominantly, let's go to the federal level, okay? At the local level, there are still some honest people. There are still people trying to do some good. But by the time you get to Congress, okay, if you've got some young person who wants to go up there and become a congressperson, okay, and they go up there with the best of intentions, and then they find out that they're just on the outside looking in. And they finally, one of two things happen. They say, well, this is a load of crap, and they go home, and they drop out. Or they start saying, okay, well, I'll play the game, and I'll go along with some of this so I can get some of my stuff in. And pretty soon they're compromising, and they're saying, okay, I'll vote for your bill if you'll vote for my bill. And the next thing you know, they're part of the problem.
Something changes, man. They get that phone call. They do.
That's right.
Yes,
that's right.
Something happens.
And see, this is fascism. This is the Nazis, the way the Nazis operated. If you got in their way, they'd beat you up, and if you still got in their way, then they'd kill you. Okay, and it's the same thing happening here today. Okay, it's at the end of the war, let's say January of 1945 in Germany, their cities are in ruins. They knew the Russians are piling in from the east. Allies piling in from the west. They knew it was all over, and yet the German war production was at higher levels than it had been in 1940.
Right.
Why is that? Why is that?
Right.
Okay. It's because history makes no secret about it. Number one is propaganda. All they had to go by was their newspaper and their radios, and they were all controlled by the state. And the state kept telling them, it's all right, it's hard times, you got to buckle down, we got to work harder, but we'll get through this, and the Fuhrer will take care of you, blah, blah, blah. Okay, but the second thing that nobody likes to talk about is secret terror. If you tried to stand up and say something, you just disappeared. And then your family would get a letter saying, unfortunately, Jimmy was shot while trying to escape the Gestapo.
Right.
Right. And that kept everybody's nose to the grindstone. And unfortunately, folks, we're getting close to that in this country today. Okay? We've got 5 corporations that tell us everything we see and hear, not only news, but entertainment and music and billboards and magazines and book clubs and publishing and newspapers. Everything you see and hear is now under the control of about 5 corporations. So we're being propagandized. And as we started off talking about, the dead journalist, Michael Hastings, Paul Wellstone, the Kennedy brothers, if you really start making trouble, they kill you.
You're going to be a contact in the desert, May 29th.
Maybe I'll not say that. Maybe that's in the
Yeah. I hope you make it out there, Jim.
I hope to make it to contact in the desert.
What are you going to be speaking about this year? And by the way, last year when you came down and hung out and met all of the Fadernauts that were there and all of the contest winners, and you hung out and took pictures with everybody. You were very gracious with your time, and I don't know if I've thanked you for that since then. We've talked so many times, but I want to thank you for that. Not everybody does that, and it really meant the world.
Just sitting behind a new desk.
Oh, well, I'm always up for a party.
What is that music playing?
Our President's Day sale and
No music on my end.
That's absolutely bizarre. Somebody's broke into the program. Hey, hang on, Jim.
I can't hear it.
Wow, that was bizarre. Okay, what are you going to be speaking about at Contact in the Desert?
Oh, I wanted to tell you right at the beginning of the program, you said, I'm sorry, our cultured history is not your latest book. And actually, it is. That's the latest one that's out right now, Our Cultured History, which is basically means our hidden history. And it tracks this leadership. We've been talking about who really runs the government. Well, read my book, Our Occulted History, and you'll find out all the way back to the ancient astronauts, forward to the fact that Barack Hussein Obama and George W. Bush, Al Gore, and Dick Cheney are all related. They all belong to the same family of bloodline, okay? And that's not some wild conspiracy theory. That is verified by Dick Cheney's wife, Lynn Cheney, okay? So think about that, And in fact, right now it looks like they keep talking about for 2016 it's going to be Hillary Clinton versus Jeb Bush.
Can you believe it?
Another Clinton, another Bush. The very people got us into this mess, and they're talking about let's put some more in there. But the key thing here is the Clintons and the Bushes are related. We're talking about the same royal bloodline that tracks back to the Windsors, the royals of England, and these are still the people that are going to be running our lives. Come on, folks, wake up and smell the coffee. Anyway, my latest book, which should be out in a couple of months, is called Population Control: How Corporate Owners Are Killing Us.
Oh, there's a nightmare.
Yeah, you're gonna love that one, and I'm sure you're gonna want to get back with me when that thing comes out.
Yeah, we'll get you on right before Contact when the book comes out. We'll get you on one more time.
Okay.
Looking forward to seeing you again at Contact in the Desert. Again, that's May 29th through the 31st. I'm going to be hosting a panel with Jim Mars. I think it's Jim Mars, Richard Dolan, Mike Barra, Nick Redfern, and William Brown, and I think there's a sixth. But I'm excited about that, actually. I'll be the guy hosting a panel with you on it, and I'm.
Well, that ought to be a hoot.
Yeah, have mercy on that crowd. Thank you so much, Jim.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Always a great conversation. Thank you, Jim. Be safe out there in Texas.
Adios.
Jim Mars, everybody. Thank you, Jim. That was pretty weird. That commercial breaking in on the line. I got to go back. What was the commercial about? All right. I'm going to take a quick break, and I'll be back right after this. I got enough time. Let me look at the studio clock here. I got time for maybe 2 calls. 323-825-5045. Wrap this up. Thank you, Jim Mars, live from Tejas. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Bespoke radio for the masses on the Game Changer Network. We'll be back right after this.
And I listen to JimmyChurchRadio.com. Jimmy Church. My name is Alan, and I listen to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
He's always giving it to you straight.
JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Massey, and you're listening to Jimmy Church Radio, the Revolution.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Fade to Black, the Monday edition. Thank you, Jim Mars, live from Texas. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Shoot me an email, Jimmy at JimmyChurchRadio.com. Jim Mars. If you want to check out Jim live, definitely contact in the desert. All the information is right there on our website. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Who's calling?
Jay, it's Josh.
Hey, Josh, what's cracking, man? What'd you think of Jim Mars?
Hey, I love Jim Mars, man. I'm right down the road from him.
Oh, that's right.
I'm right down. Yeah, man, I'm not too far from him.
You ever bump into him out there in public?
No, I've tried to get in touch with him a couple times and haven't succeeded. I'm going to send you some photos, some scanned newspaper articles.
Uh-huh.
I haven't been out in Abilene, next to Abilene. I was driving out there. Had a little thing on antique store on the side of the road, and I went in there and they had a stack of old newspapers. And I was in there and I looked. And the first one, I said, "Look at that silver disc on the front end of it." On the front page. I read about it and everything, and I hope to get it to you. I'm going to try to get it to you sometime this week. There are two newspapers I got out of a big old stack. I paid $1 a piece for them. And they're out of Colorado, but it actually took place in Bethesda, Maryland. And one's out of Golden, Colorado, and these are newspapers that were from 1949. This has to do with the James Caldwell. I don't know if you're familiar with that. The Gray Goose.
Uh-huh.
You know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't. This is interesting.
Okay, well, this old boy, he developed it was a vertical takeoff plane. It was one of them. But in this photo, there's two different photos. There's two different newspapers, and it's on the front page and everything. And it's got that gun silver disc, and this is 1949. And in the article, there's a Air Force officer, representative, talking about it. And they want to get a hold of this guy, and his name is James Caldwell. And they want to get a hold of him, and I mean it's a dadgum silver disc. And in the article, talks to some guy that worked with him, and he states in there that they've been flying these since 1935.
Interesting.
And and so and I just happened to stumble across this, and I was just like, it was like, whoa. So I bought them. I got them for $1 a piece, and it goes on to the main page. There's a little bit of other articles, and a little bit more writing of it on there. I had heard about this a long time ago, probably about 6 years ago, or maybe a little bit longer than that. But the thing about it was, they went to go find him, and it was in Bethesda. And when they did, they came across, and it was like they had a wife and a daughter, and they came in the house, and what they did was like they just had abruptly left. I mean, there was food on the table, and everything like that. And there was something with stocks and stuff, but he had two different things that were on there. One is it's a vertical takeoff, like the what is it, the British Harrier, vertical takeoff airplane. Okay, and there is a silver disc on it, and then the other one's just a picture of the silver disc. And
Josh, you've got to scan it and send us some stuff, and then talk to Rita about getting that out there to us. I'd like to check it out. We're at his photo. We're at his photo on it. No, we're at the end of the show, man. I gotta run credits and get out of here.
Okay, all right, brother. Get out of there, man.
Yeah, thank you so much, Josh. You know what to do. You know what to do.
I will do.
Thank you, Josh.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you. Wow, what a great night here. This is Bespoke Radio for the Masses. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Thank you, Jim Mars, live from Texas. Thanks for that call, Josh. Thank you, Michael. Earlier, he got disconnected, but we got that call in. Thank you for all of the calls tonight. Jim Mars. This is Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network. Fade to Black's executive producers Rita Kamarian. Shows produced by Hilton J. Palm and Mark D. Kovar. Thanks to LJ3, Renee, and Jonas. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Viteau, and Mark D. Kovar. Fady by Dale. Webmaster is Method of Signaling. Music by Doug Aldridge. Intro by Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Tomorrow night, we're going to play Spaceboy's version of Yo, the remix. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Thank you to Jim Mars. Everybody be safe. Tomorrow night, Nick Redfern right here. See ya.